miehleketo hi dya yi tlhela hi xipa ndzi ri halala Aldrin Sampear halala wena la tselekiweke eswitikweni swa vutlhari a katingiwa etimbiteni ta vutivi a sekiwa hi galaza ra vutshila loko ri mina ntombi ya mutongo n'wa xambula makutlo wa madyavula ri la tsundzuka n'wana hi ku heta ndzi ku hluvulela xihuku ndzi ri kula u ringana na ndlopfu halala Aldrin Sampear halala.
Aldrin Sampear on Beyond the Headline.
It is 10 minutes after 3 o'clock. Good afternoon and welcome to Beyond the Headline with me, Aldrin Sampear. Thank you so much for choosing us this afternoon. We're with you from now up until 6 o'clock. Have you ever been stopped by, Patrick, I think you once shared this story actually. Have you ever been stopped by a police officer? And and they accused you of being undocumented? Was it you who shared that story? Okay, it must have been somebody else who shared that story. Yeah, so they stopped you because they thought that you are a foreign national, right? Yeah, and then when you spoke Setswana, then they backed down. So I don't know how many of you have ever experienced being profiled by police who have stopped you on suspicious, reasonable grounds that you might be an undocumented foreign national and therefore you need to produce your ID document. People don't necessarily walk around with their IDs in South Africa because we have outlawed the dompas and people walking around with their IDs to prove that they are South African. There's this incident that happened here in Gauteng where a 15-year-old was stopped by police who suspected that she's an undocumented foreign national. She's a grade 9 pupil actually. She told the police that she is South African and they didn't believe her. She was later then taken into a van, put into a police van and taken to a police holding cell, and then later on the father had to come and bring the document to show that she is actually a South African. This is now, do we now expect of children to carry their birth certificates? Do we expect of children to carry their birth certificates? South Africa does have a big problem of undocumented foreign nationals, but do we also now put the burden on teenagers, 15-year-olds, to walk around with their birth certificates to prove that they are South African? And the thing about this experience for me also is that she is approached on, as the SAP said in the statement that they released. Let me just quickly read a part of that statement that has been released by the police. They say, Section 41 of the Immigration Act requires any person approached on reasonable grounds by the police officer or immigration officer to identify themselves either as a citizen or a person lawfully present in South Africa. The police acted on that basis. The person in question was stopped and requested to be searched and identify themselves, and she was allegedly not cooperative. Hence, she was then taken by the police. The father later came with her documentation and she was then released. So that's the statement that has come from the police. And of course, the South African Human Rights Commission is also investigating the case, so we will be speaking to them a bit later on. We'll also be speaking to the father of the 15-year-old. But here's the thing about this, is that also the South African Human Rights Commission is saying that the police didn't break any law. The police didn't break any law. They were going about their work and suspected that here's somebody who could be an undocumented foreign national and demanded identification. The person couldn't provide identification, and therefore she ended up in a police van and then later on in holding cells. And it was only later on that her father then came with her birth certificate that she was then released. So with the problems that we are facing at a national level, which of course has an impact on what happens on the ground, and how police also interface with you and I, what is the solution? What is the solution in a country where we're dealing with undocumented foreign nationals, an influx of undocumented foreign nationals, but where you have South Africans themselves also being, because this is what it is. The suspicion is an accusation, an allegation that you could be a foreign national. And how do you deal with that? When we speak about black consciousness, and in South Africa you do find different hues of our color, the pigment of our skin in different hues. Dark, you can find very, very dark, and the person is actually, the person actually is actually Mxhosa, and not even from the northern parts of South Africa. Right? So those are the issues that you face. So how do we deal with those? 0614104107, and you can also drop me an X at Aldrin Sampear. But I also want to know about people, hear from people rather, who have been stopped by police on suspicion that they are foreign nationals and undocumented foreign nationals at that. Also on the show this afternoon, the IEC had a press briefing a bit earlier on the state of readiness for the May 29th polls, and the timetable is now out. So we'll be speaking to the IEC about the timetable. And speaking about the IEC's timetable, there's a group of political parties, including the ATM as well as the EFF, that are not happy with the deadlines that have been set and also some of the other criteria. So we're speaking to Vuyo Zungula, who is the leader of the ATM, that is the African Transformation Movement. He'll be joining us at around 4:10. And then also in the show this afternoon, we hope to speak to the National Consumer Commission, and this is with the latest regarding the various retailers recalling peanut butter products, and Woolworths is now the latest one to pull off the peanut butter ice cream from their shelves. So we'll be speaking to the National Consumer Commission just to get an update with regards to their investigation. So those are the stories that we have on the agenda this afternoon. Anything else that you'd like to place on the agenda on the 0614104107, and you can also drop me an X at Aldrin Sampear.
The only talk radio afternoon drive show that makes sense. Beyond the Headline with Aldrin Sampear, right here on SAFM.
16 minutes after 3 o'clock. So police in Mpumalanga have recovered a vehicle that was stolen in the Eastern Cape. Listen to this. 13 years ago, 13 years ago, the vehicle was stolen 13 years ago. It was reported when members of SAP's task team were doing vehicle verification on a white Toyota Corolla. It transpired that the vehicle's identification number, that is the VIN number, on the license disc didn't correspond with the VIN on the body of the vehicle. Apparently, a 31-year-old male who was traveling to Eswatini was immediately arrested afterwards. We now speak to Captain Makonseni Nkosi, who is the police spokesperson in Mpumalanga. Captain Nkosi, good afternoon. Thank you so much for making time for us. I would have never thought that a car that was stolen 13 years ago would ever be recovered.
Yeah, good afternoon, and good afternoon to our listeners. Thanks for having me in the show. What I can say is that we've got a problem in Mpumalanga whereby a number of vehicles that are stolen from all over South Africa are being transported through our roads to the neighboring countries. In this instance, where we had our members who were doing the joint operation, the 30 members, which comprise of Nesting Border Policing as well as Mamba Border Policing, the conducted operation at Nesting Port of Entry. On Saturday 24th, a Toyota Corolla, which was destined to Swaziland, just approached the port of entry, and upon searching the vehicle, our members could see that the license disc VIN number as well as the VIN number on the body of the vehicle do not match. So a thorough investigation was conducted, and it came out that the vehicle in question was reported stolen in Komani in 2010 December. Formerly known as Queenstown in the Eastern Cape. So the driver was arrested and he is expected to appear in Amsterdam Magistrate Court today.
Yeah.
We cannot rule out the possibility of any other charges of theft of motor vehicle pending our investigation.
Okay. Were you able to find the owner, the previous, I guess still the owner of the vehicle?
Yeah, currently we are still busy with the investigation, and our vehicle investigation service still busy with the car. As soon as everything has been put together, then we will be able to contact the station in question where the vehicle was reported stolen.
Okay, so just quickly explain to us, Captain, in terms of the database that you rely on when you run your search around cars that have been stolen, hijacked, and so forth. How far does that database go back to? I never thought that it would go as far back as 13 years, but seemingly it does. I wonder how far back does it go?
I call it this specific legend, but it differs according to our recoveries. You know, at times you can find that the vehicle is stolen 2 minutes ago and we recover 8 just now. At times you can find that it was stolen maybe 5 years, 10 years ago, as in this instance. It depends on the operation that you conduct and maybe the place where the vehicle is used.
Yeah. Captain, thank you so much for your time. Captain Makonse Ninkosi, spokesperson for the police in Mpumalanga. Imagine that. Car stolen 13 years ago, and the car is now recovered. 0614-104-107.
The Northwest Provincial Legislature's Portfolio Committee on Economic Development, Environment, Tourism, Agriculture and Rural Development will embark on public hearings throughout the province on the National Small Enterprise Amendment Bill, Basics in B 2023, on 28 February 2024 in Ngakamudiri Molema District at Mutswedi Community Hall in Mutswedi, in Dr. Kenneth Kaunda District at Ballroom Hall in Matlosana, in Dr. Ruth Sombuti Mumpati District at Mkanang Community Hall in Christiana, in Bujanala District at White Hall in Breds. All hearings start at 10.
You are listening to Aldrin Sampear on SAFM.
0614-104-107. So Cameroon says it has ordered an autopsy to find out the causes of the death of Kenyan runner Charles Kipsang, who collapsed and died on Saturday after crossing the finish line at the Mount Cameroon Race of Hope. More than 600 athletes from 11 countries took part in that annual race on Mount Cameroon, one of Africa's largest volcanoes. Moki Kinzeka has that story from Cameroon.
Government officials in Cameroon's southwest region, where the race took place, say Kenyan runner Charles Kipsang performed extraordinarily well, leading more than 600 runners from 11 countries up to about 3 kilometers to the finish line in Saturday's race. While fans and his supporters expected Kipsang to complete the remaining 3 kilometers and lift the trophy, he collapsed but struggled to keep on running. Bernard Okalia Bilai, governor of Cameroon's southwest region, where Buea is located, says
the athlete who was at his fourth participation at this race, at 15 or 20 minutes from the arrival, had a malaise and he stopped the race. It took some time and continued the race despite all what the technicians were trying to go into the ambulance. He came 16. He reported to the official at the arrival after the malaise, and he reported that he was 16. The award of trophies went well. Some 30-40 minutes after, we were informed that when he was going to collect his own prize, he just collapsed. Carry him to the regional hospital. When they arrived at the hospital, he already passed away. So we cannot say exactly what happened.
It is, however, suspected that the 33-year-old Kenyan runner died of a heart attack after collapsing at the finish. The over 600 runners were from Congo, Ethiopia, France, Kenya, Lebanon, Morocco, Tanzania, Chad, Nigeria, Tunisia, and Cameroon. They ran up and down Mount Cameroon, which is over 4,100 meters above sea level and is said to have a particularly difficult terrain. Another Kenyan athlete, Cheboy William Ruto, says he regrets the death of his countryman. He spoke in the following interview with Cameroon State broadcaster CRTV.
I feel pain because it is my first time to run in a Cameroon mountain, but next time it will be okay for me. I have marked the way and next year I will participate.
I'm happy you are keeping the morale despite what happened to your fellow compatriot. Lots of Cameroonians felt it was you. Probably it's time for us to say no, it's not you.
Yeah, it is not me. Let me take this opportunity to say sorry to our guy who we lost this coach's plan. We don't know. To Cameroonians also, they mourn our guy because it's not easy to lose somebody who is in our life. It is so painful.
Tell us about this race. You virtually animated this competition. You led the race for the most part, and everybody was waiting to see you first or second. What happened?
Everybody was waiting for me to win, but unfortunately, when I reached somewhere 3 kilometers to finish, my leg became heavy.
Reporting for Channel Africa, this is Moki Kinzeka in Yaoundé, Cameroon.
Hashtag SAFMBTH.
0614-104-107, and you can also drop me an X at Aldrin Sampear.
Hi, Mr. Aldrin, how are you? I'm a truck driver. They sent me to go and load by my company at Mpumalanga in another mine. After that, the guys, they say I'm coming to steal the coal and what. and then they start beating me, they are harassing me, they beat me, they put me in handcuffs and everything. After that, they call the police. The police, then they come there, they didn't help me. And then I show them the company and then the registration, all my name. There is no one who helped me on that. So the security, those who got in their mind, they abuse me, they harass me. I've got the footage of the camera.
Yeah, but sorry to hear about that incident, but was that related to them suspecting that you are a foreign national? Because that's the question that I'm asking this afternoon, is that have you ever been stopped by the police on suspicion that you are a foreign national and therefore they wanted to see your documentation?
Hello, Aldrin. Hope you're having a good Monday, and all the listeners. I think you're actually talking about this story. It sounds a bit similar to Tito Mbowene's son. If you just make a quick Google search of that, Tito Mbowene's son was also threatened with deportation because of the same thing. They thought he was he's an undocumented foreigner. But then, look, I think the best way to tackle this issue is just more border control. You just make sure that the security around the border is tight. That's it.
Yeah, thank you so much for reminding us of that. That actually happened in 2013 when Tito Mbowene's son was suspected of being a foreign national. That is Tumelo Mbowene, who was allegedly pulled out of a minibus taxi on his way to have breakfast with friends in Sandton City, and that's when he was accused of being a foreign national. 0614-104-107, and can also drop me an X at Aldrin Sampear.
You are listening to Aldrin Sampear on SAFM.
27 minutes after 3 o'clock, in conversation next with Dr. Siphumelele Duma, who's a postdoctoral research fellow at the University of Johannesburg's Institute for Pan-African Thought and Conversation. West African leaders have agreed to ease sanctions on Niger following a July coup that deposed elected President Mohamed Bazoum. They have also called for the immediate release of President Bazoum, who has been detained since the military takeover. The decision was reached after an extraordinary summit of ECOWAS heads of state in Nigeria's capital, Abuja. Dr. Duma, good afternoon. Thank you so much for making time for us. So Niger, Burkina Faso as well as Mali threatened to pull out of ECOWAS, and now there is this deal to have to at least try to get them back to the decision-making table and also back into the ECOWAS fold. How would Niger respond to such an invitation?
Well, good afternoon to you and to the listeners at home, and thank you for having me this afternoon. So what I can say at the moment is that obviously Niger has not yet met the initial demands that were put forward by ECOWAS when they slapped them with those sanctions last year. So now that means that obviously that there is either a backlash to the sanctions that were put by ECOWAS on Niger, and it's junta that is leading the country at the moment. As you may have heard during that extraordinary summit on Saturday, that ECOWAS is considering taking a different approach to how they are handling these issues of military coup in the region that are currently happening, because obviously this is coming also after these suspended member states being Burkina Faso, Niger, and Mali. They are considering opening a new mutual defense pact, if I may put it that way. So that obviously puts an organization, ECOWAS, in a situation where they are facing the existential crisis. So obviously that means that they'll have to review their positions on these issues. So you may have heard, like, the language has completely changed. On Saturday, you may have heard the leaders addressing that summit. Everything has completely changed now on how they are talking about this, because obviously the subjects of these sanctions have not demonstrated any will to back down on how they are currently are moving here. So
to what end, though, Dr. Duma, do you think? Because on the other end as well, you have ECOWAS that had suspended Mali before, and then a decision was taken to lift the sanctions against Mali, and now it's the same Mali that decided that we're going to pull out of ECOWAS. to what end would ECOWAS continuously re-invite these people that it is also accusing that you are not following the protocol?
Yeah. So one of the main things that were highlighted during that summit in Abuja was that they are trying to put ahead of everything, or as the priority, the regional integration and its security. So with the region or the organization, community of West African states facing the biggest threat they've ever seen in their 50 years of existence, I will not consider it unheard of for them to then reconsider how they are going about with these issues. You may have heard the president of Nigeria, who is the current chairman, he was mentioning that they do not want to be deemed by these formally suspended and hit with sanctions member states. They don't want them to deem them as the enemies.
The enemies,
you know. So, but now, yes, they don't want to be seen as enemies as the organization. So what they are trying to do, that's what they said, that they are trying to restore the constitutional and democratic order in the region. So what these member states have been ordered, and by the way, none of them has conceded to any of the demands that have been made by ECOWAS. Yeah. Even though ECOWAS goes on then to concede and pull back some of those sanctions, which makes the organization looks a bit weaker. None of them have acceded to those to those demands. But it remains to be seen how all three members, because I'm struggling to define Niger outside of the other, three suspended member states. It remains to be seen how they are going to react.
Yeah, and also would they be able to go to civilian rule, which is one of the demands that is actually being made also by the ECOWAS member states around what should happen now and demanding that they should return to military rule. Thank you so much for your time. That is Dr. Duma, who is a postdoctoral research fellow at the University of Johannesburg's Institute for Pan-African Thought and Conversation.
And in the headlines, an official from the Presidence's office has received the memorandum delivered by unemployed health workers who marched to the union buildings in Pretoria today. About 200 unemployed healthcare workers under the banner of the South African medical trade unions have called on the President and government to offer them jobs. In other news, citizens have just a week to inspect the voters' roll and lodge objections as to the inclusion or exclusion of a voter on it. This forms part of the elections timetable published last week, which specifies activities and cut-off dates of eligible voters and those intending to contest the 2024 national and provincial elections. And the Prime Minister of the Palestinian government, which administers parts of the Israeli-occupied West Bank, has submitted his resignation to the President Mahmoud Abbas. I'll be back with more on these and other stories at the top of the hour.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
And let's see what's happening on the roads with Rob Byrne. Good afternoon.
Thanks, Aldrin. Good afternoon to you. Very busy already on Joburg's Mike 1 going south. Is backlogging between Houghton Drive and the Crown Interchange. That's a very early queue for that section of roadway, so just be aware of that. If you're in a real hurry, you might want to come off and just duck down Joe Slovo through Berea and head down towards the M2 highway. That'll work. Durban, a breakdown in the usual spot. That's the there's a few usual spots, isn't there, these days, but we're talking about the M2 just after Ngeta Road, so coming through from Inlander Road on your way towards Spaghetti Junction. Looks slow. If you got through between Ashburton and Linfield Park a little bit earlier this afternoon, wondering where the closure was for blasting, it was a late notice cancellation, so there was no blast. That traffic is moving and has been moving pretty normally all day today. The blasting at Linfield Park, as I say, was cancelled earlier. Cape Town side, the M5 is fairly heavy. Got queues between the N2 and the N1 Kubo interchange, just northbound through the Maitland area, and some roadworks have been lifted on the N1 out of town, the Okavango Road, so that traffic is busy, but give it another couple of minutes and the backlog should have worked through there. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
This is SAFM Sports with Tuming Kapele.
And it is raining nominations for South Africa.
Yep, reigning nominations for South Africa, 4 nominations to be exact for South Africa at the Laureus Awards, and obviously everyone is speaking about those nominations for the Springboks and Siya Kolisi. The Boks were nominated for this year's Laureus World Team of the Year award following the World Cup win over New Zealand in October, and they'll be against the likes of Manchester City, Spain's women's football team, and Red Bull Racing F1 team, amongst others, while Kolisi has been nominated for the Laureus World Comeback of the Year award after recovering from a partial ligament tear to lead the Springboks to glory. In football, CAF President Patrice Motsepe is yet to confirm if he'll be going for another term or make way for a successor come next elections. Motsepe, who has saved the organization an amount of close to 60 million rand by returning all personal bonuses due to him back to the organization, he has chosen to talk more about the capable leaders to succeed him at CAF rather than revealing his future plans.
I think we should all be proud for the excellent work and also thank our journalists. I mean, you are the people who give the message. I said to you, I was in UEFA, at the UEFA Congress yesterday, and some of the top football leaders in the world are saying, I mean, what's happening in Cote d'Ivoire? It's amazing. It's incredible. It's as good as the best in the world. And I can assure you that excellent work will continue for many years to come, even when I'm not there.
Well, still staying with football, Kevin Johnson has apologized to Kaizer Chiefs supporters after the club's humiliating Nedbank Cup exit and called for the technical team and players to do some serious introspection if Amakosi are to end their trophy drought.
I think within the team we have a lot of positives, and with the positives comes the young blood, and with the young blood comes the ability to go on the pitch and do what they can in order to make the people that support us outside of the village even happier. I think what we're getting right as far as Kaizer Chiefs is concerned is that we do know that we need to please. I don't know how many million supporters we have. Maybe I should ask. I think we have about 5 million. Am I right, Vin? 16 million supporters. And for me, that is my biggest trophy I will win when I make them all smile. Why? Because I've seen what it's like to make 60 million supporters happy. So when you talk about 60 million and 16, I don't think I've changed my appetite for that. So yes, we will smile soon. God help me.
So you can imagine 16 million fans are not happy right now.
16 million. Do you know 16 million is way more than what the governing party actually attained in the elections, in the last elections? 16 million. Can they convert that 16 million to stop the 9 years of a trophy drought? So you see, you can have all of the support that you want, but if you don't have the players to convert the support,
be nice.
So you have your, what do they call it? You call it again? The 12th player.
The 12th player.
You've got the 12th player
You
there.
have the
16 million strong 12th player. But
unfortunately, the silverware is not coming. Well, moving on to athletics, South African 100-meter record holder Akani Simbine has confirmed that he will kick off his season at the Athletics South Africa Grand Prix meeting at Piltridge Stadium on the 18th of March. And although he won't be participating in the first meeting in Potch on the 14th of March, Simbine, who holds the national record of 9.84 seconds, is currently gearing up for the ASAA Senior National Championship that is set for the 18th to the 12th of April in Pietermaritzburg. Ending things off with cricket, India clashed a series win over England as they edged out Ben Stokes' side by 5 wickets in a thrilling finale to the 4th test, chasing a target of 192 runs in the 4th innings. India were reduced to 120 for 5, but Shubman Gill and Dhruv Jurel put together a 72-run partnership to help India take an unassailable 3-1 lead in the 5-match series. The 5th and the final test will begin on the 7th 7th of March. On that note, it is a wrap from my side. For SAFM Sport, I'm Dumin Khapele.
And we will buy 500 cars, and we will buy 500 more, just to be the one who buys your car. We'll come to you and offer more. We buy cars, we buy cars. Da-da-dun-da-da-dun-da-da-dun-da-da-da-da. We buy cars, we buy cars. Da-da-dun-da-da-dun-da-da-dun-da-da-da-da.
We Buy Cars, the easiest way to sell your car by far.
Nottingham Forest are navigating a path to the top half of the table.
Has to be a goal from Hudson. Yes! There we go! Get in there! Wrap it up against West Ham United.
While Liverpool focus on a massive strategy to be on the summit until the end of the season.
That's outstanding! Liverpool have turned the game on its head. McAllister's thunderous cross.
Experience the Premier League contest between Nottingham Forest FC and Liverpool FC on Saturday 2 March at 4:30 p.m. live on SABC3. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Brought to you on SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
You are listening to Aldrin Sampear on SAFM.
Taking your voice notes on 0614-104-107. When we come back, we're in conversation with Prudence Moilwa, who's the head of complaints and investigations at the National Consumer Commission. You may have heard of peanut butter products being recalled. Now, Woolworths is the latest retailer to recall its ice cream, which has a peanut butter product in it. So we'll be speaking to Prudence about how how widespread is this concern of the aflatoxin that has been found in some of these peanut butter products, also considering that you have a Pick and Pay also that has pulled some of its brands. I think it's recalled three brands, including its no-name smooth peanut butter, as well as Eden Smooth and Eden Crunch peanut butter off the shelf. So also, as a parent, have you told your kids to stop eating peanut butter? Maybe you are one of those parents that love peanut butter. Have you stopped eating peanut butter? And what else do you like to know about this concern that has been flagged by the National Consumer Commission? And then at 10 to 4, we speak to the Electoral Commission, and this is after they have now issued the electoral timetable for the upcoming elections. They'll be taking place on the 29th of May.
Hi, Adrian. I hope you are well. Anonymous again. Adrian, I feel like there is a little bit of discrimination on this topic. Why someone who looks like a foreigner must be asked for a document, and someone who doesn't look like a foreigner mustn't be asked for document? There is a kind of a discrimination. How does a foreigner look like? This is the question that I end up asking some guy, because he asked me, where are you from? I told him, where am I from? And I asked him, where are you from? He asked me in return by asking me and said, do I look like you? So I asked him, do I look like a monkey and you look like a human being? I feel like there is a kind of like discrimination. Even the people, most of the people that they call the undocumented foreigner, you should ask them what is wrong, why are they not getting a document? Because let me speak about Congolese, because I'm also Congolese. Some Congolese people who've run and come to this country, you don't know how many sacrifices they are making for them to get just a simple asylum, but the Home Affairs is making it very hard for everybody. Even Tatem Toaledi can testify what I'm saying. Thank you.
Yeah, and what you say about the profiling of foreign nationals, or the so-called suspected foreign nationals, is that I doubt that you'll find that there's a white person who would be arrested or being suspected of being an undocumented foreign national in this country. But black people, who are in the majority, are more likely to be accused or suspected of being an undocumented foreign national.
Good evening, Aldrin. About that car that was found stolen after 13 years. I mean, if proper checks were to be made on the road, many cars will be stopped and many people will be arrested, because there's a lot of unscrupulous car dealers that many people fall victim to. car dealers that sell cars that are stolen, but unbeknownst to the purchaser, they think that the car has not been stolen. So if a proper check were to be done, a lot of cars would be stopped on the road and a lot of jail cells would be closed.
So what's your advice for a new car buyer? If you want to go buy a new car, what advice would you give that person? This is, well, not a new car, but a second-hand car. The one that you wouldn't suspect of having been stolen, only to find out later on that the car has been stolen. How would you advise such a person? What is it that they need to be looking out for?
Hashtag SAFMBTH.
15 minutes now before 4 o'clock. We're in conversation next with Prudence Moilwa, who is the head of complaints and investigations at the National Consumer Commission. Woolworths is the latest high-profile retailer to recall its peanut butter product after tests showed the product contained higher than legal levels of naturally occurring aflatoxin, which can be dangerous to humans. Earlier this month, Pick n Pay recalled 3 brands, including its no-name Smooth Peanut Butter, as well as Eden Smooth and Eden Crunch, which are sold in their stores countrywide. Following these incidents, the National Consumer Commission is calling on all manufacturers of peanut butter and products with peanuts, including chocolates, sweets, ice creams, and spreads, to immediately investigate their products. For more on this, we speak to Prudence Moilwa, head of complaints and investigations at the National Consumer Commission. Prudence, good afternoon, and thank you so much for making time for us.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon to you and to your listeners. Thank you for having us.
Appreciate your time. How widespread is this aflatoxin that has been found in certain peanut butter products or peanut products?
I think it remains to be seen. Since, as you already indicated to your listeners, that we have requested that all producers and retailers of peanut butter must start their testing, and this to just make sure that we retain, confidence in the product. Because when we started, we thought it only affected products that were carried by Pick n Pay, which, as you correctly indicated, was their own no-name brand, and the other product that was carried by them that was produced by their suppliers. So soon, the week after, we then got a notification from Discam to say that actually their own natural peanut butters were also affected by the recall. It has now since come to light that also Woolworths is carrying, in terms of their peanut butter, their ice cream, their peanut butter dairy ice cream also has been affected by this aflatoxin.
So ordinarily, in terms of quality control, how would a retailer know that actually the product that I am about to put on my shelves actually has a high level of aflatoxin?
Yeah, there is a standard in terms of the Department of Health where they are supposed to use what is called the Hazard Analysis Critical Control Point certificate that gives them that certificate. That is the best handling practices for the production of peanut butter. So that we suspect that something went wrong in the manufacturing of peanut butter. Currently, we are conducting an investigation against the House of Natural Butters, which is the main supplier that has been supplying all this peanut butter, both to Pick n Pay and Discam, and other suppliers that have supplied on, like Rio Wozicals, that have supplied this product eventually to Woolies. So the reason why we want everybody to test it's just the way that the overlap in the supply chains of certain suppliers and manufacturers and retailers, where we think that there is a possibility that we cannot just go after a particular manufacturer. That has made it now, to a point where the Commission is now saying to everybody who carries peanut butter to test their products and then provide the results to the Commission, and also publicize it to South African consumers so that they have confidence in their products.
For now, though, you haven't been able to find out what the primary source of this high level of aflatoxin is.
We have an idea. I think from our interactions with the House of Natural Butters, we have an idea of the fact that something somehow went wrong in the production where the peanuts might have not been stored correctly. But so far, because we're doing a formal investigation, more information we suspect will be uncovered by this investigation as we continue to engage with the House of Natural Butters.
A question here from one of our listeners. So please tell us how aflatoxin is formed, and perhaps maybe with that as well, can you tell us what some of the dangers are?
Yeah, aflatoxin apparently is a natural forming kind of toxin that is usually found or developed from a fungi that is found where peanuts are produced. And in terms of the regulations by the Department of Health, there is a certain level that is allowed where it is not toxic for human consumption. So in terms of the allowed levels, what is happening is that once it goes beyond certain levels, then it becomes toxic to the body, and for consumption it becomes then a little bit, not a little bit, dangerous for consumption. And according to the information that has been made available to the Commission is that the immediate signs of having consumed aflatoxins would be like your vomiting, stomach problems, and so on and so forth. But the long-term effect is what worries us as the Commission, with information being brought to our attention that it can actually result over time into cancer. And I think that is why we as a Commission take this so seriously, and we're talking so much about it to say to consumers, please do not consume this product that is being recalled. Return it to your point of sale.
Yeah, I actually saw an article in the independent papers indicating that with acute cases, though rare, can lead to rapid liver failure and even death.
Yes, that's what information has been brought to our attention by various researchers as well who are assisting the Commission in this recall, to just emphasize how important it is for people not to consume these products that are affected.
Is there a place that people can go to look at the list of products that have been recalled, or what's your advice in terms of them being cautious? This is now consumers.
Yeah. Well, for starters, I think everything has been removed from the shelf that is being recalled, and what is important is for consumers to look through their cupboards to check if the affected products are there. I think for one, you can go to the National Consumer Commission website, which is www.National Consumer Commission or ncc.org.za. So I think that is very important for you to check. And also on the websites of Pick n Pay, Discam, as well as Woolworths, you will find the information about what is currently being recalled, because those products are carried by those major suppliers. So if you go to their websites to also see the pictures of the products that are being recalled, you'll be able to find that information.
Thank you so much for your time. Prudence Moilwa is the head of complaints and investigations at the National Consumer Commission.
So Sharon officing was telling me the way drip is so expensive these days. She's now waiting for her old clothes to come back into fashion. I say, Joza, while you're waiting, why not let your money do the things in a Nedbank Just Invest account, where you can get your money after 24 hours notice? Oganchani, voiceman.
In Jalo, Mabel, you can earn up to 8.75% interest. Anyone can open an investment account via the Money app in under 2 minutes. See money differently. Nedbank. We're a licensed FSP and registered credit provider. Promo rates apply.
Mzansi Africa.
Siyabulela nangomso. Thank you for witnessing the Africa Cup of Nations Cote d'Ivoire 2023 in your language of choice on SABC radio stations, digital platforms, and SABC TV channels.
Big ups to Unilever for being on board.
Your magnificent and heartwarming support gave millions of South Africans a spectacular and exhilarating experience during AFCON.
Asonye. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
You are listening to Aldrin Sampear on SAFM.
Aldrin, good afternoon. Vincent Risumati here in Springs. It happened to me also in 2020 that I bought a car, and a few days later I was stopped at a police roadblock, and the car was found to be stolen. So they took the car, and then I went back to the dealership, and then they said that I should add another amount of money, which I did,
then they gave me another car. So my advice would be for any potential buyer, before you buy a second-hand car, just ask for police clearance. Insist on police clearance. And then if they can't give you police clearance, then I would say don't buy, because they even will give you fake registration papers. It happened to me also. So yeah, police clearance I think is the way to go. Thank you, Vincent here.
Hashtag SAFMBTH.
0614-104-107, and you can also drop me an X at Aldrin Sampear. We're in conversation next with Masigo Shiburi, who's the Deputy Chief Electoral Officer for the Electoral Operations at the Electoral Commission. So, following the proclamation of the election date, the Electoral Commission says those who wish to object to the inclusion or exclusion of voters on the voters roll must do so by the 4th of March, so that their objections are attended to and resolved as soon as possible. They made this announcement earlier on today when they were briefing the media on this year's election timetable. Joining us to elaborate further on some of the things that were raised this afternoon is Masigo Shiburi. Masigo, good afternoon, and thank you so much for making time for us.
Good afternoon.
What would you say are some of the important elements, especially for the electorate, first of all, to take note of in the timetable?
The timetable signals a commencement of a number of things. The first one for political contestants is that the electoral code of conduct is now in force. So prohibited conduct can be enforced by the electoral court, and punishment may be meted on parties and candidates that are found to have transgressed those provisions. For voters, it signals a number of things. Those who intend to vote outside their voting districts, especially those who are going to vote overseas, can now go onto our website and start giving us notice of their intention to vote abroad and indicate the mission at which they will vote. For other voters in the country, the voters' roll will lie open for inspection from today until the 4th, to enable persons to raise objections against the competence of people who have been included or excluded from segments of the voters' roll. Thereafter, the Commission will have a number of days to consider those objections and take decisions on the voters' roll. Once that is done, the chief voter will certify the voters' roll, and that voters' roll will be the voters' roll used for the elections.
And then for the special votes, these are now people who are not necessarily traveling, but they will still be in the country, but won't necessarily be where their voting station is at.
Indeed, after the Chief Electoral Officer certifies the voters' roll, then there will be stability on the voters' roll. We will open at that point applications for special votes by persons in the country. A person, for example, who owing to a physical condition is unable to physically go to a voting station on voting day, those can apply for special votes, and our teams will visit them at the places of confinement and enable them to vote in conditions of dignity. Those who can go to a voting station but know that they will be away from their voting station can also, around the 12th, start applying for special votes, and those will vote at their voting station before they proceed to leave the areas in which they are registered. The last point to make on prior notification is that persons who know already that they will be unable to vote at their voting districts, either because they are away on work or unavoidably out of their work area, those can give the Chief Electoral Officer pre-notification. Those pre-notifications will open around the 15th of March and they will close on the 17th of May.
Yep.
To indicate that they will not be able to vote in their voting stations and indicate that other voting station at which they intend to vote, and make arrangements for those.
Yeah, I don't know, Masigo, if you've received as yet the complaint from a number of political parties, including the EFF as well as the ATM, and they are protesting against the election timetable, the deadlines that have been set. But they're also raising a point about the challenge around signature requirements and IDs, and say that it could be in contravention of the POPI Act. I don't know if the IEC has dealt with this matter before.
The matter has certainly not been raised with us, but as it relates to the timetable is discussed with political parties represented before the commission issues it. We had a meeting on Friday and the timetable was adopted unanimously. The timetable provides for more days than we've ever had hitherto, including those additional elements in the timetable. Parties that are represented by the EFF will not have to submit signatures to demonstrate support because objectively they have support because they have representation in legislative assemblies. A few minutes back, the Constitutional Court has delivered its order in the Livonia cycle matter, in which it says it is not in the interest of justice to hear the application to reduce the signature requirement for unrepresented parties. So those parties would still have to meet 15% of the quota for these elections. We've not had responses or objections that the signature requirement will offend POPI or those type of things. The period for making objections ought to have been made then when the matter was still in Parliament. What we are doing now, we are implementing a legal provision.
Thank you so much. That is the Deputy Chief Electoral Officer for the Electoral Operations at the Electoral Commission.
Independent and impartial. This is SAFM News.
And top stories this hour. Presidency receives memorandum from unemployed health workers, and Palestine's occupied West Bank Prime Minister resigns. Good afternoon. An official from the Presidency's office has received the memorandum delivered by unemployed health workers who marched to the union buildings in Pretoria today. About 200 unemployed health workers under the banner of the South African Medical Trade Union, supported by their employed counterparts, have called on the President and government to offer them jobs. Phil Mahlangu from the Presidency's office received the memorandum and assured them that it will be responded to within the stipulated time frame of 7 days.
As the presidency, we are immensely, worried about what is happening, and including, negative issues that affect the industry of medicine, including the doctors as such. So we shall make sure that indeed the response are being responded to within 7 days. Ours is to receive the memo on behalf of the President. The actual memorandum will go to the Ministry of Health, and that is where they will get the responses.
And in our elections-related news, citizens have just a week to inspect the voters' roll and lodge objections as to the inclusion or exclusion of a voter on it. This forms part of the elections timetable published last week, which specifies activities and cut-off dates for eligible voters and those intending to contest the 2024 national and provincial elections. IEC Chief Electoral Officer Simon Mabulu says the provisional voters' roll has been published for inspection today at all offices of the Commission. He says objections must be received on or before the 4th of March for consideration, investigation and determination by 11 March 2024. He added that some objections to the voters' roll are governed by the law.
Both procedural as well as substantive requirements of Section 15 of the Electoral Act must be satisfied when lodging an objection. The pertinent aspects in this regard include outlining the relief sought and establishing the basis for such relief, as well as serving the objection on the person against whom the objection is raised. Following the determination of the voters' roll objections, the Chief Electoral Officer will certify the voters' roll on 12 March 2024.
The Commission of Inquiry into the Usindiso Fire building has heard that firefighters had a hard time extinguishing the blaze as residents used water and pipes from the fire hydrant for domestic use after water to the building was cut off due to non-payment. The inquiry heard that the water supply to the fire hydrant remained connected as required by law, despite Johannesburg Water being owed millions of rands. The fire claimed the lives of of 77 people in Johannesburg last year. Johannesburg Water's head of metering and revenue collection, Sipindile Skosana, elaborates.
The water mains that supplies water for domestic usage are different to those that are used for fire extinguishing hosepipe mains. And therefore, by law, we are not permitted as Joburg Water to disconnect or restrict supply of water from the hosepipe mains. And so we do not disconnect water from the hosepipe mains.
The African National Congress in Mpumalanga's Ehlanzeni region has instructed the embattled executive mayor of Nkomazi, Phindile Magagula, to disconnect electricity illegally connected to her home in Aniva. The party's regional secretary, Fola Sibui, met with Magagula to discuss the matter after a community outcry. The EFF in the province has since laid a charge of theft of electricity against Magagula. The party has also called for her removal as the executive mayor. Last week, Magagula admitted to have illegally connected electricity to her house. She said the illegal connection was made before she was appointed as mayor. And the Prime Minister of the Palestinian government, which administers parts of the Israeli-occupied West Bank, has submitted his resignation to the President Mahmoud Abbas. The Prime Minister Mohammed Shtayyeh said he was quitting because of Israel's aggressive attack. The BBC's Jenny Hill has the details.
The Prime Minister said he was standing down in the wake of a fierce and unprecedented attack on the Palestinian people. His resignation, and that of his entire government, has yet to be formally accepted by the President of the Palestinian Authority. Mahmoud Abbas, whose administration runs parts of the occupied West Bank, is under pressure from the US, which wants a reformed authority to govern a post-war Gaza. It's thought today's decision could pave the way to the formation of a technocratic government. Announcing his resignation, Mohammed Shtayyeh said the new reality in Gaza required new political measures.
And recapping our top story this hour, an official from the Presidency's office has received the memorandum delivered by unemployed health workers who marched to the union buildings in Pretoria today. I'll be back with the headlines at the bottom of the hour. For SFM News, I am Nomalizo Mandela.
In your sports this hour, Musimani wins case against Al Ahly Jeddah via FIFA tribunal, and Everton won appeal to reduce points reduction. More details at 4:30.
Conversations that you connect with and react to. SAFM. The Market Update, Monday to Thursday, 6 to 7 p.m.
Want to stay ahead of the financial game? Join us tonight from 6 to 7 p.m. for an insightful journey through the day's market developments, financial updates, and investment news. Tune in for your daily dose of financial intelligence as we navigate the twists and turns of the financial landscape with expert insights. Only on the SAFM Market Update.
SAFM Market Update with Jimmy Muyaha. SAFM has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Under the code, we are committed to giving news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that is not harmful, does not amount to hate speech, or contain violence or explicit sex. If you think we are not living up to that code, then you can inform the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Direct any complaints in writing to the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. PO Box 142365. Craig Hall 2024. Fax to 011-326-3198 or an email to bccsa@nabsa.co.za. For more information, please visit www.bccsa.co.za. SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Yeah, very good afternoon. The bike one straight through Central Joburg is quite heavy. There's pressure coming all the way from Melrose side right down into Crown Interchange. That is a collision at the Crown Interchange area. Also, breakdown on the N3 South just around Modderfontein Road. So an early start to delays pushing down from the Limbro Park side. And some rain has left a bit of flooding around the Davidton area, particularly Kingsway around the N12. Be careful out that way. Traffic is quite badly backed up as well. Durban, good news. The breakdown before Spaghetti Junction, that has been cleared away, so it's a normal flow just for the minute between Umgena Road and 4 Level. And Cape Town fairly busy. The N2 and N3 reach queue to Hospital Bend on the outbound. The N2 stays busy right through to Bunga Avenue. And the M7's under pressure going into Mitchell's Plain. It was this morning. It is again today. M7, Jake Scovell queuing to the R300. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Here, there, and everywhere. SAFM 105.3 FM in Uppington.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
10 past 4. 10 past 4.
This is Aldrin Sampear on Beyond the Headline.
It's 10 past 4, and coming up on the show in this hour, the story that we told you about the 15-year-old who was detained on suspicion that she is an undocumented foreign national, and later on taken to the Hillbrow police station and kept at the holding cells. She will be joining us actually with her mother. She'll be joining us in studio in the next short while. We will be speaking to her and her mother, but we're also speaking to the Gauteng provincial manager at the South African Human Rights Watch, Ms. Zamantungwa Mbeki, around the complaint that has been lodged as well as the investigation. And as the South African Human Rights Commission has indicated, that unfortunately it was the police acted lawfully. However, though, this is not something that you want to see happen to a 15-year-old. This is not something that you want to see happen to a 15-year-old. 0614-104107, and you can drop me an X at Aldrin Sampear.
Hi, Aldrin. It happens a lot, more especially to us who are, dark-skinned. It happened in my case when I used to stay in Davidton, there in Barcelona. In my case, it was actually the army. So luckily, I was able to converse, in isiZulu, and that's how I escaped the arrest. Personally, I don't have a problem, but the challenge with these things are done, to target only black people, especially who are dark-skinned. You hardly find whites, the Chinese, Indians, going through such things. Komi, Pretoria.
And that's the sad reality about this, right? Is that the victims of this profiling, mostly, I haven't heard of anyone from any other race who had been profiled, and the presumption was that the person is an undocumented foreign national. It happens to black people. 0614-104107, and you can also drop me an X at Aldrin Sampear.
Hi, Aldrin. So in the issue of police maybe request some document if they suspect of anything, I think the South African government need to introduce something or any system that can be able to help police to dial your ID number and be able to verify you whether you are a South African or what, so that it will be each and everyone job to know his ID number by head, so that we can avoid all of these things. Because in other countries where we visit, once they stop you and say, we want this document, you're supposed to produce them. You're supposed to produce them on the spot. It's a driver's license, ID, or it's your passport. You're supposed to do that.
Well, what do you think? Is a 15-year-old going to be able to produce that ID, that birth certificate? Should they be walking around with their birth certificates? What do you think?
Aldrin, this idea of carrying identification on you, let me tell you the truth. Me personally, I grew up in the late 80s and 90s in a place that was particularly very, very active against apartheid. I will try not to boast too much, but we gave quite a lot of leaders to the liberation movement, the place where I grew up at. The idea of stepping out of your house without identification, document, an ID, or even driver's license is foreign to us, because these people used to be arrested at any time. They transferred that idea that you must always have identification on you 24/7. So it's foreign to me to travel without identification.
You are listening to Aldrin Sampear on SAFM.
It is 15 minutes after 4 o'clock, and we're in conversation next with Zamanto Mwambeki, who is the Gauteng Provincial Manager at the South African Human Rights Commission. A 15-year-old teenager was wrongfully arrested for not presenting identification after she was searched in Hillbrow. The minor was held in detention for almost 2 hours and was released after her father produced a South African birth certificate. The father of the child has tried to open a case against the police officer or officers in question at the JP police station. However, the case has not been registered since the incident. Our next guest has launched an investigation into the circumstances of her detention. Zamanto Mwambeki now joining us on the line. Good afternoon, and thank you so much for making time for us. Hi, Zamantunga, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
We can hear you now. Good afternoon, and thank you so much for making time for us. Tell us about this investigation.
Deeply concerning investigation. It was brought to our offices by the father, who indicated that her daughter had been detained while walking the streets, just like you and I or anybody's daughter or child. So to us, it brought a number of concerning issues. Some that were raised now by the listeners who called in about potential profiling and potential discrimination that can arise when there is no oversight and there's such instances of arbitrary arrest.
And as the South African Human Rights Commission, what's your advice on these things? Because as noted in the article in the Sowetan, it's not the first time that you've received such complaints, and as pointed out in that article as well, that the police may have acted lawfully. However, though, this is not something that you expect to read about, a 15-year-old being expected to carry their ID or carry their birth certificate.
Rightfully so. When on our engagements with SAPS, they've told us before that this is actually regulated in terms of the Immigration Act and in terms of the Criminal Procedure Act. Now, just because, as you said, that something is lawful and is regulated in law, at this point we're questioning that provision. That means that at this rate and time, any South African is supposed to be carrying an ID. And the thing is, it's not the way that maybe one of the listeners said it, that it's how do you distinguish between a South African and a non-South African? And does this mean that there should be a law that says that everybody in this country must carry documentation in the same light as it happened during apartheid? And now there's a thin line between that when in getting a response from SAPS that says, no, this is actually regulated by the Immigration Act and the Criminal Procedure Act, but it seems that it is streamlined towards one particular group of people because it's not saying everybody within the territory of South Africa should carry some form of identification. It's specifically targeted at saying if you are assumed to be a foreign national, as the previous caller said, then you are requested. And that brings up a number of issues which resonate with, like the caller said, with utterances and ideas that existed during apartheid.
I don't know, do you do any work then with the South African Police Service? Because on the one end, they have a job to do. They have to enforce the law. They have to know whether a person is in the country lawfully, whether the person is documented. So unfortunately, carrying out that duty also means that you run the risk of profiling people and also being discriminatory in your approach.
Definitely, we have a number of engagements with SAPS in terms of our preventative mechanism. We conduct monitoring, and we have a number of stakeholder engagements with them on a number of issues. But on this issue particularly, I think the idea before was that the people who were detained were adults or during a raid of some sort into a building. However, what we saw now is something that has not really happened. You will note that a few years ago, there were a number of raids that were taking place that resulted in that case. And during the process of the raid, you would find that the people would be requested and detained on spot. Now, they would say at that time that this was done within the process of a raid or during operations. But now you are finding a situation where a minor, a person walking down the street, to the extent of detention, and you asked the right question, Aldrin, does it mean minors must carry birth certificates? In this current context in our country, it means it's a paper. The same as an asylum seeker, a permit, the same as a refugee, it's a paper. And there have been other calls from other civil society organizations that say, at least if you make it a card or something that is one is able to move about more easily. But now when you're talking about a minor, I think that's what makes these circumstances very, very different. That for an hour or for those hours, the father couldn't get hold of the child. Did they follow the right procedures? At which point was the father informed? And that's a very, very serious allegation in our country. He did not know where his child was during that period.
No, thank you so much. Because you also in the article with the Sowetan indicates that you had to use one of the phones of the fellow detainees. And sorry to use that description; it sounds so weird. Because here we're speaking here about a 15-year-old. But Zamantunga, thank you so much for your time. Zamantunga Mbeki is the Gauteng Provincial Manager at the South African Human Rights Commission. 0614-104-107. You can also drop me an X at Aldrin Sampear, and our studio line is 086-000-2032. When we come back, we speak to the 15-year-old.
SAFM supports a litter-free South Africa. Play your part in keeping our surroundings and environment clean. SAFM, leading the conversation. Top Sport with Michael Abramson.
Rugby analyst Khotsoselo. Blitzboks didn't have the best of outings last time around. A heavy defeat against New Zealand, losing to Ireland in the pool stage. They need to bounce back here and have an opportunity to do so in Canada, in Vancouver. But I believe they're playing on a synthetic surface, which the coaches said might well suit the South African side.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's the style that the South African Sevens teams usually employ, which is a more ball-in-hand approach and a very fast type of game, and I think a synthetic field, promotes that with the type of speed and skill that they have in the back line, and the fact that they've recalled Roscoe Speckman back into the team, as well as Justin Geduld, two experienced guys who've been there before.
Top Sport on SAFM. The only talk radio afternoon drive show that makes sense. Beyond the Headline with Aldrin Sampear, right here on SAFM.
It is 22 minutes after 4 o'clock, and we're in conversation next with the 15-year-old in question who was detained on suspicion that she is a foreign national and undocumented at that, and she's actually joining us in studio. Good afternoon, and thank you so much for making time for us.
Okay, good afternoon to everyone and the listeners at home. I would really like to thank everyone for understanding my situation and what I had to go through.
Okay. Thank you so much as well for making time for us and actually coming to the studio to come and share what happened to you. So let's take it back to the moment that you were on the streets, where with the police, what happened?
Okay, so I was walking towards the Mr.
This is in Hillbrow?
Yes, in Hillbrow. Yeah. I was walking towards Mr. Price, and by the corner of Mr. Price, a group of women surrounded me and stopped me. And they started asking me about... they have the permission. I didn't hear them because they were talking very fast, and one of them was searching me at that time. They were talking while searching, and at that point I'm looking at myself because I'm looking at where she's touching me. Then she touches my private areas. That's when I stopped her from searching me, because I know that's not the right thing to do. She then continued to search me, and then
I told her that what she's doing is wrong. She can't be searching me in my private areas without my permission. And she told me, you don't have the right to ask any questions, you don't have the right to say anything, because we are asking you questions and you don't have to ask any questions. She then continued to search me and she grabbed my private areas, saying I can touch you wherever I want to. Then after, there was a van across the road, I remember. Then she pulled me by my jacket because I kept on refusing for her to touch my private areas and continue searching me. She asked me if I have documents. I said, no, I don't have documents. She asked me if I had a passport, and I said, no, I don't have a passport. Then I said, I'm 15, I have a birth certificate. Then she didn't actually listen to me. She then grabbed me and said I had an attitude. That's why she's gonna put me in jail. And I asked her, and then I told her that's not a valid reason for you to put me in jail. Then she just grabbed my jacket and went. Then by the pavement, I asked her to let go of me by body movements, and then I told her I'm gonna cross the road alone and enter the van. I then crossed the road alone and entered the van, and this tall guy, I can see him on the streets, but then I don't know what
is it like a hawker?
No, he's a police officer.
Oh, also police
officer. He kept on saying, you guys think it's home, you think South Africa is home, like things like that about foreigners and things like that. Then they put me in the van, and the van was full at that time. So when I entered, now we were busy pushing, and I'm asking people to make space for me, and then because they were adults and they understood, they made space for me, and yeah.
So when the police officers approached you, were you alone?
Yes.
So what, were you just walking past? What was happening?
Oh, I was just like a normal person walking to the store. Then by the time I reached maybe like 3 meters away from the door of Mr. Price, it's a group of ladies. Yeah. Apparently they're not police officers, but then they work for the police station as, I don't know, reserves or trainees.
Okay. But were they wearing police uniform?
No, they were wearing, it was a rainy day. They wore raincoats, and then she opened up her raincoat to show me her name tag, not a badge, just a piece of paper. She flashed it. She didn't show me what her name is or anything like that. Then she just closed it and kept on doing what she was doing to me.
Okay, so now you're in the van, then what happens?
First, there was a pregnant lady. So she was crying, and it was very emotional at that time. She kept on asking the police to give her or to let go of her, and she would go in a different car because she was pregnant and it was full already. By the time I entered, we were over 8. And the van was small. So then they moved with us as we were going. They kept on putting more people inside the van as we went on the streets and roads, because they were just grabbing people on the road.
Would you say that the people that you were in the van with are people who are also being suspected of being foreign nationals and undocumented?
Yes, because I remember this guy that was next to me. The other ladies that were there were foreigners, and they did say they don't have documents. But the guy sitting next to me said he's Xhosa. You can even hear from the accent, and he had an ID at that point. So then when we saw the ID and he was trying to show the police the ID, they just shut the door. So
okay, so what's going through your mind at this time where more people are being bungled into the van?
I was crying. I was thinking of, why don't they believe me? I told them I'm 15, but they're still gonna put me inside the van. And I just couldn't stop crying. And then the people inside of the van kept on telling me that don't worry, this usually happens to people. They've made it a norm in the society. So they just told me don't cry. They kept on not embracing, but then motivating me to stop crying and just continue with it, and you're gonna see when you get to the police station.
Did you at the time comprehend what could be playing out? Did you have any appreciation of what this is?
I felt as if it was a one-in-a-lifetime experience, honestly, because normally no 15-year-old gets arrested. So I felt like at least it's sometime, or it's by time someone does make a difference and does actually make people see the visuality of what happens in the streets of Hillbrow.
Do you live in Hillbrow?
The location is not Hillbrow, but then visually, when you look at it, it's Hillbrow. It's Parktown. It's
you're in Parktown.
It's on the main road of separating Parktown
and Hillbrow. Okay. So now you get to the police station. Then what happens?
They open the van. The tall guy continues. Makwere, you guys think this is home? Then they make sure that everyone is out of the van, and then they just told us to stand in the passage. Then we were not charged of anything. Just told us to stand in the passage. We stood there. Then they opened another door leading to the cells. Then we stood there for a moment. They kept on talking. I kept on trying to convince them that I'm 15 and they didn't want to believe me. Then after they separated us, and I have a video image of every single thing that happened, right? So if you could see the videos, you could see what I'm talking about. Then they separated male and female. Then they put us in the female cells. And then they put the guys in the male cells.
And then they didn't give you an option of calling your parents.
They didn't take my phone. They didn't take anyone's phone, because I was confused. Guti, how can a person be arrested and still have their tech devices and merchandise and everything like that? They didn't take my phone, so I kept on please calling, and they tried checking up on me here and there if I'm okay, because my sister was worried at that point.
Okay. Yeah, I see that in the Sowetan article they speak about how you asked a fellow inmate to contact, I think, your sister as well.
Yeah. I tried calling my mother didn't answer. Calling my father didn't answer. Then I called my sister. Then my sister did answer. Then she asked me where I am and how many are we and things like that.
Yeah. And eventually your father did come.
First my uncle, because my uncle is a lawyer, something at the police station. He's a lawyer.
Okay.
He's always around the police station. He came to see what's happening.
Yeah. And when did your father then arrive with your birth certificate?
It was, I sat there for long, but then my parents came I sat there for 2 hours. But I remember from the first time they took me into the cells, it was about 2 hours. So after the 2 hours, then they came.
Okay. Well, your father has now lodged a complaint with the South African Human Rights Commission. But what is it that you'd like to share with fellow South Africans, whether it is police officers, people in positions of authority, or even just fellow South Africans in general about your experience?
To my fellow South Africans, at some point I've realized that anything in South Africa can happen. Some of the things you may not think or believe they actually happen to people out there, but then once you're in the shoes of the person, you get to realize that South Africa's ways of working has changed, and the corruption, because when I was there in the cells I realized a lot about corruption, and how when I was crying and making noise of saying can I please go out, when I was talking, because I was in the cell, so I was talking to the person behind the doors, when I kept on saying I'm 15 and things like that, they told me to keep quiet. You're gonna make people suspicious of this place, and you're gonna make people want to come here, because no one in a high position of the police station, like the commanders or the colonels, were not around there. It was just the typical police officers you see on the road. So as South Africans, I feel like we now have to take action and try to find justice for such situations, because if we keep on making it a norm, then now we as children have to live in fear, because now I don't like going to the Mr. Prize anymore, because I'm afraid of the same situation. So I now have to live in fear because of what happened to me before.
I'm so sorry for your ordeal. So sorry. And to our listeners, she's actually sitting next to her mum, but her mum has asked not to speak on this matter. So thank you so much for making time for us. Really appreciate your time. Thank you for being so brave and sharing your story with us as well. And let's see what comes from this investigation by the South African Human Rights Commission. Really appreciate your time. I really appreciate your time as well, Mum, for making her available. We're a bit late now for the news headlines. Let's quickly go to the news headlines.
And in the headlines, all independent candidates and political parties intending to contest the national and provincial polls must submit the nomination requirements by the 8th of March. These include the list of candidates, required signatures for independents and unregistered parties, together with the prescribed deposits. In other news, an official from the Presidency's office has received the memorandum delivered by unemployed health workers who marched to the union buildings in Pretoria today. About 200 unemployed health workers under the banner of the South African medical trade unions have called on the President and government to offer them jobs. And Israel is expected to file its report card later today on its compliance with the 6 provisional orders handed down by the International Court of Justice on its conduct in the war in Gaza. More details on these and other stories at the top of the hour with Greg House.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
In Joburg, the collision on the Mike 1 South, the crowd is being cleared, so busy, but starting to move from the Melrose area. Durban, the bottom of the Southern Freeway. M4 is clogged up as you approach the N2. In Cape Town, a crash on the M1 outbound at Old Oak Road in the Belleville area. That's a heavy queue from Monte Vista. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
This is SAFM Sports with Tuming Kapele.
In your sports this hour, despite progressing to the Nedbank Cup round of 16 over the weekend, Richards Bay coach Vusimusi Vilakazi maintains that their priority remains DStv Premiership survival. The Natal Rich Boys beat Polokwane City 3-2 on Saturday night, a victory Vilakazi would probably have traded for 3 points to help them move up the league table. Richards Bay will discover their opponents at tonight's last 16 draw, but Vilakazi was quite quick to remind journalists of their primary targets for the season.
One would have loved to get the lower division, of course, but in our case we must be honest to ourselves. I think we are focusing on the bigger picture, but it is unfortunate that you cannot say throw the game away so you can focus on the next one with no confidence. And I think this win will have a huge impact psychologically in our players going to our next game. So as much as we compete and respect the sponsors and give all that we can, but it's not about that, it's focusing on the bigger picture so that we can do well in our next game.
In the meantime, Amazulu hope to have both Abubakar Mubara and Rowan Human back for tomorrow's DStv Premiership clash away at champions Mamelodi Sundowns after both were among several players who suffered a mysterious eye infection last week and missed their Nedbank Cup win over Royal AM. They had a swelling in the eye which club officials suspected that they picked up in a swimming pool in Cape Town where they were earlier this month for their league loss to Cape Town Spurs. Doctors felt that it was contagious and that the players need to keep away from the camp, but are now expected to be back for the clash at Loftus Versfeld. In the meantime, Pitso Mosimane has won his case against Ali Jeddah via the FIFA tribunal. Mosimane helped Ali to gain promotion back to top flight after they had been relegated for the first time in their history. Now, the one-year contract Mosimane signed included a clause that if he gains promotion, a huge windfall of bonuses would follow, while his deal would automatically be extended. So basically, right now, they owe him more or less 22.5 million rands. Then Everton have had their point deduction for a breach of the Premier League's profitability and sustainability rules reduced to 6 points from 10. Everton were docked points with immediate effect in November after being found to have breached profitability and sustainability rules relating to losses. The point deduction meant that Everton dropped from 14th in the standings into the relegation zone with 4 points, and now with this new reduction it means that Everton move up to 15th in the standings with 25 points. In athletics, manager of the Nedbank running club Nick Bester has announced that Ethiopian athlete Tadu Nare will be returning to vie for a victory in the upcoming Spa Women's 10-kilometer challenge. The Grand Prix series, encompassing of 6 races in Cape Town, Gqeberha, Durban, Pietermaritzburg, Mbombela and Johannesburg, offers a grand prize of 200,000 rands and overall point leaders. Nare include alongside Yvette van Zyl and Renee Karma boast a remarkable record of 3 series victories each. With that said, it's a wrap from my side for now. I'll have more in the next hour for SAFM Sport. I'm Tuming Kapele.
SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide. Leading the conversation. Top Sport with Michael Abramson.
Here are 5 countries from the soccer world: Argentina, Romania, Soviet Union, Colombia, and England. In that specific order, what is the significance of these countries with regard to international football? Sandile, I believe you've got an answer for us.
I think I do know the answer.
Let's hear.
Those are in that order, those are the countries that Cameroon played against Italia 90.
Well done on your football knowledge. Cameroon in Italia 90. They played Argentina in the opening game 1-1-0. Then they played Romania. Then they played the Soviet Union. They actually topped their group, would you believe? Went to the round of 16, beat Colombia in the round of 16, and then lost to England in the quarterfinals 3-2 after extra time in a most unfortunate result. But everybody fell in love with that team.
Top Sport on SAFM. Hashtag SAFMBTH.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
And it is time for a market update with Makwe Masilela, Chief Investment Officer at Makwe Fund Managers. So Makwe, good afternoon. Welcome to the show. So Sasol's disappointing interims, and also let's look at Lipstar's encouraging yearly trading update.
Afternoon to you, Adrian, and to the listeners. Yes, Sasol performance took a beating from continued volatile macroeconomic environment. Weaker oil prices, averagely they dropped by 10%, and petrochemical prices dropped by almost 24%, and also unstable product demand, inflationary pressures, also inventory destocking, and there was some operational improvement in South Africa, but unfortunately, Transnet issues offset that. Revenue down 9%, profits as headline earnings per share down 34%, with their interim dividends down 71%. And Lipstar, remember, these guys are manufacturers of your private label brands, commonly known as the no-brand names, also your Lenswood dairy products, and also your Danish mushrooms. And despite supply chain disruptions, load shedding, and low consumer confidence, trading performance improved. Revenue up 5.8%, but volumes were down 4.8%. An indication of weak consumer environment, and unfortunately their diesel cost increased by 97% to almost 77 million rands per annum, and the headline earnings per share were up 28.5%, mainly due to the money received from the insurance, and they are talking almost 120 million that they got from the insurance. But if you look into normalized headline earnings per share, those are expected to decrease by 12.7%.
And tell us about local and international market developments.
Inflation is in focus, but there's a lot of economic data coming out this week, which will be more decisive for whether investors will stay in what we call the risk-on mode or not. And there's GDP data coming out of the US, PMI numbers from China, producer inflation from South Africa, consumer inflation from Japan, US, and European Union. And resources are unfortunately one of the biggest losers as investors are concerned when it comes to Chinese demand. And if the economic outlook remains upbeat, we might start seeing a more meaningful rotation, and that is out of cash into risky assets such as equities, and oil traders battling with views that higher than expected inflation could delay interest rate cuts, but have been, and we know that those are the ones that have been capping growth in the global fuel demand. And traders are also looking for some fresh clues about global demand and balances. But Brent crude still managed to go up by 0.5%, trading at $81 a barrel. And higher interest rates, we know that increases the opportunity cost of holding gold as it is non-yielding. So with market scaling back expectations of rate cuts, the yellow metal becomes less attractive. We see gold is down 0.3% at $2029, platinum down a whopping 2% at $883, and then the DAX is flat just like the Dow. S&P is up 0.1%, the CAC is down 0.4%, FTSE is down 0.1%, and the JSE is down a whopping 8%, dragged mainly by our resources, which are down 1.5%, our financials are down 1%, and our industrials are down 0.3%, and then the rand is 19.31 to the US dollar, 24.50 to the pound, and 20.95 to to the euro.
Thank you so much. That's Markwe Masilela, Chief Investment Officer at Markwe Fund Managers. We're taking your calls on 086 000 2032, and you can also drop me a voice note on 0614 104 107.
The cost of living crisis is real. Here's what one Outsurance client did about it.
I'm Amy. I'm 26 from Kenilworth. When I got my 2022 Ford EcoSport, the immediate thought was to buy an Outsurance, and I pay only 819 Rand per month. No insurers were able to beat or match the premium that I'm currently paying.
Want a car insurance premium that will blow your mind? SMS out to 30754 now for a quote and to find out about included benefits like panic assistance that sends the nearest medical or armed response unit to you wherever you may be 24/7. Here's Yusuf.
45 years old from Tygeral, Western Cape. I pay 700 Rand for my Polo 1.6 2021 model. If you haven't called Outsurance yet, definitely get in touch.
Give it a go. SMS out to 30754 now. That's out to 30754. Outsurance is a licensed insurer and FSP. T's, C's, and limits apply. Premiums are risk profile dependent and reviewed annually. Client comments do not constitute financial advice.
Nottingham Forest are navigating a path to the top half of the table.
Has to be a goal from Hudson. Yes! There we go! Get in there! Wrap it up against West Ham United.
While Liverpool focus on a massive strategy to be on the summit until the end of the season.
That's outstanding! Liverpool have turned the game on its head. McAllister's thunderous cross.
Experience the Premier League contest between Nottingham Forest FC and Liverpool FC on Saturday 2 March at 4:30 p.m. live on SABC3. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag we love it here. Brought to you on SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
You are listening to Aldrin Sampear on SAFM.
Good afternoon, Aldrin, together with the SAFM listeners. This is Linda Somtala in Joburg. I've just listened to your interview with the young lady. I had to share a tear there. Her story is not a good one. I don't know, I feel like saying sorry to her. You know, she doesn't deserve that. At the same time, I also think people that were wrong was those ladies. But mistakes like that, I don't know what triggered it. Mistakes like that, they usually happen. But at the same time, we must not forget that it's all in the attempts of maybe trying to uphold the law, but maybe exceeding the boundaries. But I don't think the police intend to bring fear to people everywhere. Very apologies to the lady. We all feel for her. Maybe she be safe again and be able to go back to Mr. Price that she likes around the place. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't know what you mean by that. Also considering that. Well, this is her version, of course. It is her version of what happened. We haven't heard from the police as yet, apart from the statement that the police has issued, and I'll read that statement again. I'll read that statement shortly. But when the police start calling people I won't use that term, but she used it a bit earlier on. That they think that this is home. It already tells you about the attitude of the police officer going into affecting an arrest or the suspicion of the person or the individual or individuals being undocumented. I don't know, maybe there's a police officer who's listening and can tell us that how do they determine whether an individual that they've come across is somebody that looks like they could be a foreigner. What sort of features do you look at to say that this particular individual could be a foreigner, and therefore going to require the documentation, the ID? Because here's the thing: is that yes, the police need to do their work. They need to enforce the law, as I pointed out to Zamantungwa as well a bit earlier on. The police need to do the work, otherwise they are accused of not enforcing the law. And then on the other end, you have this unfortunate situation, specifically in our country, where you have the profiling of black people, and the disposition is that the black person is a criminal, and therefore can't be trusted. If you remember the Phoenix incident as well, it was black people who were being profiled, and as we learn from incidents like these, is that the profiling does not necessarily stop with the individuals in society, but it also goes as far as those who are appointed by the state to enforce the laws of the country. And these are people, of course, that come from the very same society that would have such dispositions, and also the discrimination, unfortunately, that comes in a country like ours, where on top of the racism that we're dealing in this country, we're also dealing with Afrophobia.
Good afternoon, Aldrin Mataboge. Aldrin, I think the police were doing a good job. However, the problem is that the focus is only on one type of people, black people only, yes, and not everyone else. I should think that going forward, whoever does that from that unit must be able to do that to every nation or race, so that this thing is treated equally to everyone. And when we travel abroad, normally we carry our passports with us wherever we go, because if we get stopped along the way, they would want to know whether we are there legally or illegally. I've been to many countries, and the instruction is that be with your passport wherever you are. Thanks.
Yeah, but that's you traveling. So already you know that you are traveling, you are outside the country. But you then inside the country, and speaking here again about a 15-year-old, and do we expect a 15-year-olds to be walking around with their birth certificates, so that they don't experience whatever the 15-year-old has gone through, so they avoid that? So just in case, is that the conversation that you have with your child, and say that, baby, because you are so dark-skinned, chances are that the police are going to suspect you of being an undocumented foreign national, or going to suspect you of being a foreign national, and they're going to ask for your identity documents. Therefore, I would prefer that wherever you travel with your birth certificate. Is it fair to expect that of a 15-year-old child? And I do also appreciate the difficulty of the work that needs to be done by the police, because they need to enforce the law.
SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide, leading the conversation.
It's 9 minutes now before 5 o'clock. We're in conversation next with Leanne Moses, who's the Executive Director of the Funza Literacy Trust. We learn more about the work that's been done by the Funza Literacy Trust and its exciting approach to learning in South Africa. Funza uses the power of mobile technology to get young people hooked on reading. Its interactive and popular network, funza.mobi, provides young people with a library at their fingertips. And Leanne Moses now joining us on the line. Leanne, good afternoon, and thank you so much for making time for us.
Good afternoon, Aldrin and SAFM listeners. Thank you for inviting me.
Can you take us a few steps back? When did you come up with this idea?
So I didn't start it. The founders started the organization in 2011 when they recognized that there was a lack of books and material aimed at teens and young adults in South Africa that mirrored their lives.
And what was their intention behind starting such a platform?
At the time, it was printed books, and it really was to showcase stories that resonated with the lives of the majority of South African teens that they didn't find in traditional bookshops.
And then, of course, technology came along, the various social media platform sites that we have access to, and now there is a .mobi that is attached to the name.
Yes, so I actually got to know the Funza team when I was still working at Mixit.
That makes it.
Many, many years ago. And Funza had a presence on Mixit, and that's how I got to know the team, and that's when they started using technology to reach teens and young adults.
and then they devised their own Mobi site, the one that we currently use.
Mm-hmm. And what does the Mobi site now offer?
Sure, it offers thousands of pieces of content, both fiction and non-fiction, and it also enables young people to submit their own stories for publication.
Oh.
So over 15,000 young people have already submitted pieces since the end of 2022, and some of them have acquired quite large followings from their peers. And then we commission pieces from professionals in various languages, various South African languages, and we are also expanding this year to French and Swahili.
Yeah. So with the offerings that have come from the people that are using the site, are there any good ones? Perhaps maybe at the top of your head, or maybe that you can speak about, who eventually found publicists as well, and perhaps maybe their books are on shelves now.
So we are a publisher. So I can think off the top of my head about Kaylin, who has a following, and her genre focuses on werewolf fantasies. It has quite a following on Funza.mobi. And we actually last year commissioned professional pieces from her, so we'll help mentor her and guide her through the stages. But we have a serial coming out in June that focuses on her genre. And this is the first attempt to see whether we move young people into the creative economy from, them coming onto the site and just publishing their stories as a hobby, and moving them into the creative economy and seeing how we also can incentivize and reward them for publishing their pieces on Funza.
Yeah. Do you also give them some sort of training around, like for instance, if somebody says that I have a piece that I'd like to get published, however, though I don't know how to go about it, and also whether the writing itself is captivating for an audience?
So currently, what they do is you have to submit it via the Love Writing portal, and the Funza team will then assess it. We try not to do a heavy edit on it, so we try to keep it in the voice of the young person. And then we will send, if logically the story makes sense, we publish it, if everything else is fine. Otherwise, we do send extensive notes back, and we do invite them to join our Funza Fellowship, which is an 8-month intensive program that's run by professional writers.
And any big corporations that you're currently working with?
Sadly, no. And this is, I guess, as we grow and go along, is to really work with organizations who are interested in reaching the youth. Last year, the platform reached 4.1 million young people. And the cost, if I were to look at it, is for a nominal fee of R2 per user for annual access to the platform. So they can access as many books, they can publish their own work, they can access blogs, and they can even do short courses.
Tell us more about the short courses.
So short courses cover everything from how to write an academic essay, financial literacy, and there we actually did partner with Momentum Metropolitan Foundation, and we also have courses that tackle social issues like how to overcome bullying at school, how to overcome substance abuse. So there's quite a broad range in our courses. And last year it was accredited by a Finnish institute called the Education Alliance.
Yeah. Okay, in conclusion, Leanne, for people who are listening who would love to partner with you, how do they get in contact? But then for people who want to also visit the site and also experience what it is that the other, did you say 4.5 million?
4.1 million.
4.1 million users are experiencing on the site. How do they go about it?
Sure. We welcome any emails to info@funza.co.za. They can use the subject line of partnerships. And for any young person or parent or older sibling that's listening, they can access the Mobi site via live.funza.mobi.
Thank you so much for your time, and appreciate you making time for us, Leanne. All the best with the work that you guys are doing at the Funza Literacy Trust. Leanne Moses is the Executive Director at the Funza Literacy Trust. 0614-104-107, and you can also drop me an X at Aldrin Sampear.
You are listening to Aldrin Sampear on SAFM.
On the case of the 15-year-old who was detained because she didn't have her ID or a birth certificate on her, I got a text here from one of our listeners who said that they arrested my son in this way they arrested my son on his way to write an exam at WIT when he was about 19 years old, now 37, because he could not name the part of the body in Sizulu, regardless of him being Zulu, as they come. And I remember those days. I really remember those days. I remember living in Katlehong, and the police would have these raids and so forth, and they would ask you what an elbow is in isiZulu, and if you couldn't answer what an elbow is in isiZulu, then they you must be a foreign national, and then you get detained up until you're able to prove that you are not an undocumented foreign national and you actually have your documentation that you are actually a South African.
Good day, Aldrin and the crew. Hey, the story of the young lady, Aldrin, is very, very, very unfortunate. But Aldrin, these things we see every day in daylight. These people are doing this thing every day. Aldrin, go to Pretoria, Tshwane, on the corner of Struben and Van der Vaart. What is Van der Vaart now? Is it Liliengoy? Yeah. Corner of Struben and Van der Vaart. There are police there who wear blue t-shirts. They are there every day, Aldrin. They stop people, and I sometimes stop there and watch. Aldrin, they will be touching them everywhere, inappropriately. You could see what I corner, man. They go in front of people, searching the person, taking the person's wallet, going into the person's wallet and all the like. I corner, Aldrin, no. Especially once they establish that this person is a foreigner, they even beat them up. Those guys at corner, Struben and Van der Vaart, they even beat them up in daylight. They beat up people there. And I remember one day someone was trying to shoot a video. He was shooting a video of this guy. They were beating another young man. And they turned to him so violently. They took his phone to delete that video. It was a messy situation. Hey, Aldrin, good tough outside there.
Independent and impartial. This is SAFM News.
Concord declines to enroll electoral challenge in Israel to fight compliance with ICJ order. Good day to you. The Constitutional Court has declined to enroll Rivonia Circle's constitutional challenge of the Electoral Amendment Act for urgent hearing. The think tank sought to challenge the act insofar as it still requires unrepresented political parties to meet a signature requirement of 15% of the quota of the relevant province in order to take part in the elections. Rivonia Circle submitted in papers that if the signature requirement for unrepresented political parties is not remedied urgently, the upcoming elections may not be free and fair. Kenny Mapanga reports.
The Concourt in its order concluded that it is not in the interest of justice for the court to entertain this matter on an urgent basis. The Apex Court further noted that the applicant failed to show any justification for why this application was not brought earlier, adding that if it were to determine the Constitutional Court challenge at this stage, it runs the risk of causing disruptions and uncertainty in the preparations for the elections, which will be held on the 29th of May, 2024. Kani Mapanga, SABC News, Johannesburg.
All independent candidates and political parties intending to contest in the elections must submit their nomination requirements by March 8th. These include the list of candidates, required signatures for independents and unregistered parties, together with the prescribed deposits. According to the elections timetable, the IEC will verify the documents and issue notices of non-compliance where warranted by the 18th of March. Parties will be allowed to remove or substitute a candidate that has been nominated by more than one party by the 25th of March. The IEC's Simon Mabolo.
It is a matter of immense national importance for citizens to know who the nominated candidates are. The publication of the provisional list of candidates goes to the heart of the vote based on informed choice. Therefore, the provisional list of candidates will be published for inspection on the 26th and 27th of March this year. Interested parties may object against certain prospective candidates who are nominated. Such objections must be lodged with the Commission on 27 March 2024. The Commission will decide on these objections by the 28th of March.
An official from the Presidency's office has received the memorandum delivered by unemployed health workers who marched to the union buildings in Pretoria today. About 200 unemployed healthcare workers under the banner of the South African Medical Trade Union, supported by their employed counterparts, have called on the President and government to offer them jobs. Phil Mklangu is from the Presidency's office.
As the presidency, we are immensely, worried about what is happening, and including, negative issues that affect the industry of medicine, including the doctors as such. So we shall make sure that indeed the response are being responded to within 7 days. Ours is to receive the memo on behalf of the President. The actual memorandum will go to the Ministry of Health, and that is where they will get the responses.
Gauteng Health Department says it's provided alternative phone numbers for healthcare facilities while trying to resolve billing issues with Telkom. Several hospitals in the province have had their phone lines disconnected due to non-payment. Health Department spokesperson Mutale Modiba.
Already, an amount of about 4 million was paid to Telkom last week Monday, with another 3.4 million being released today. There is also an outstanding amount which is currently being verified.
Israel is expected to file its report card on its compliance with the 6 provisional orders handed down by the International Court of Justice on its conduct in the war in Gaza. The court last month issued binding provisional measures, including that Israel refrain from acts listed under the Genocide Convention, which includes the killing of Palestinians, causing serious bodily or mental harm to Palestinians, and deliberately inflicting on the group conditions calculated to bring about physical destruction, among other measures. Show Bryce Peace reports on a statement issued by Human Rights Watch.
The rights group argues that Israel's government has failed to comply with the order to take immediate and effective measures to enable the provision of urgently needed basic services and humanitarian aid into Gaza. It says Israel continues to obstruct the provision of basic services and the entry and distribution within Gaza of fuel and life-saving aid. The UN continues to warn of catastrophic levels of acute food insecurity that is intensifying across Gaza amid rapidly declining aid supplies.
Top story: the Concord has declined to enroll Ravonia Circle's constitutional challenge of the Electoral Amendment Act for urgent hearing. That's SAFM News. I'm Greg Khos.
In sports, Springboks and Kolisi headline Laureus Awards nominations, and Everton win appeal to reduce points reductions. More details at 5:30.
SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide.
Mzansi Africa.
Siyabulela
nangomso.
Thank you for witnessing the Africa Cup of Nations Côte d'Ivoire 2023 in your language of choice on SABC radio stations, digital platforms, and SABC TV channels.
Big ups to McDonald's for being on board.
Your magnificent and heartwarming support gave millions of South Africans a spectacular and exhilarating experience during AFCON.
Asonye. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Get South Africa's best adventure SUV. The new Ford Everest XLT 2-liter auto bi-turbo 4x2, now from only $12,999 per month with no deposit. With 7 seats and a power folding third row. Get the new Ford Everest XLT at your nearest Ford dealer today. T&Cs apply.
Beyond the Headline with Aldrin Sampear on SAFM. Weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m. SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
It's quite a heavy backlog out by the airport this afternoon in Joburg. If you're on your way through to Pretoria, it's a breakdown around Atlas Road. Now, the traffic is all the way back through towards the Barber Road exit on the R24. So from that point, you go very slowly onto the R21 and then all the way up till you get past that obstruction just by Atlas Road. It is a heavy queue. Over in Durban, it's really busy today. There's a crash in at the top of Fields Hill in the Kloof area. So it's a really big backlog. The M13 queuing through Pinetown, all the way at Fields Hill and down towards the Village Road off-ramp. M7 leaving Pinetown, that's heavy to Huntsdeman, that is bluff bound, and the bottom of the M4 is all snarled up from Clarewood down towards the N2 highway. There's also just been a fairly major truck crash near Ashburton on your way to Pietermaritzburg. That traffic on the N3 westbound is backing up already to Linfield Park. Looks like only one lane open at that scene. And if you're driving out of Cape Town today using the N1, that is super heavy. There's a crash just before Monte Vista and another crash just after the Durban Road exit at Belleville. It's a heavy queue that starts around Kubo. Get a change and you only sort of get out of that once you get past Old Oak Road in the Belleville area. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
SAFM has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Under the code, we are committed to giving news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that is not harmful, does not amount to hate speech, or contain violence or explicit sex. If you think we are not living up to that code, then you can inform the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Direct any complaints in writing to the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. PO Box 142365. Craig Hall 2024. Fax to 011-326-3198 or an email to bccsa@nabsa.co.za. For more information, please visit www.bccsa.co.za. Hashtag SAFMBTH.
It is 10 minutes after 5 o'clock. Coming up on the show in this hour, we speak to Vuyo Zungula, who is the leader of the African Transformation Movement. And this is following the briefing by the IEC earlier on today. Also, the details that they gave relating to the timetable, which some political parties are contesting, including the likes of the EFF. So they've written to the IEC. So we'll be speaking to Vuyo Zungula about that. And then at 5:20, we speak to Regine Leroux, who's the Managing Director for Reputation Matters. Yet another case of a qualification scandal. This time, Langa Madongo, who is the co-founder of the investment principal, co-founder and investment principal at the Summit Africa, is also the deputy of the Association of Black Securities and Investment Professionals. He does not have the qualifications he claims to have from the London School of Economics. Yes. It is that London School of Economics. 0614 104 107.
The only talk radio afternoon drive show that makes sense. Beyond the Headline with Aldrin Sampear, right here on SAFM.
Hi, Adrian. Good afternoon. I just want to find out, so does this xenophobic act in South Africa only for people of color? I'm not condoning it in any way. I'm not saying it should happen only to certain people and not other people, but I just need to understand that. So do police people only go after people of color? And by then I mean, your Pakistanis and our fellow African brothers and sisters. And then the other white counterparts that are also foreign. So they don't even ask them. I don't understand.
If anything, how probably they're being
this is going on, because
being
I've never heard of a white
of being
person, complaining about the xenophobia.
Yeah.
Thanks.
It's like I was saying that when they probably see a white person, they don't see somebody who could be in the country illegally. They probably see if they suspect that the person is not from South Africa, they probably see a tourist and not an invader who's undocumented.
Good afternoon, Aldrin. That situation is very bad. It is very bad, and I think the police did not apply the correct procedure there because we are different nationalities in South Africa. They should ask a person, are you a South African? And then a person, if he says a vendor, then they must know how they can approach. Because Joburg, there's a lot of vendor police. If it's a Tonga, or Tswana, or Zulu, it is unfair. The procedure was not followed. I think that there should be consequences in that regard. I was also once stopped by the police there. I was also working in the police service myself. In Joburg, I was working in the West Rand. They stopped me. There was no way of checking, but because I was a police, then I talked to them. You know, the problem is corruption there in Joburg.
This is Aldrin Sampear on Beyond the Headline.
It is 14 minutes now after 5 o'clock. We're in conversation next with Vuyo Zungula, who is the leader of the African Transformation Movement. So following the IEC media briefing earlier today, a group comprising of political parties and independent candidates raised their concerns surrounding the elections timetable ahead of Wednesday, the 29th of May, 2024. In a statement, the parties have asked for an urgent meeting to discuss five key issues, including the deadline for candidate lists, voter education, the challenges surrounding independent candidates with regards to signature requirements, and the deadline for the registration fees. Vuyo Zungula is now joining us on the line. Vuyo, good afternoon. Thank you so much for making time for us.
Afternoon, and afternoon to your listeners, Aldrin.
Sure. So is the ATM not represented in the party liaison committee?
It is represented, and these views were expressed in the PNC.
So you didn't win there because earlier on we were speaking to Masiho Shiburi, who says that it was unanimous, the decision to adopt the timetable.
We did not win, but the views were expressed there, and the different context of this particular grouping is that this grouping came about as a need of political parties to drive for a free and fair elections and guarding against any misgivings of the IEC. So the first issue that came up was the issue of the timetable. You'll recall that in 2019, the election date was announced on the 26th of February to be on the 8th of May. Now this year it was announced on the 20th of Feb to be on the 29th of May. Therefore, there is 3 weeks in between the 8th of May 2019 when it comes to when it was announced versus now. However, if you look at now the cut-off dates, for example, for the objections to the voters' roll, submission of list candidates, those dates have largely remained the same, whereas in 2019 we voted on the first week of May. Now 2024, the elections will be held basically on the last week of May. So our view is that if you look at that 3 weeks, IEC is putting pressure on the parties instead of itself as an organization or an institution that is organizing elections, whereas they've got the infrastructure, they've got additional funds that were allocated in the budget speech. Now it is our view that parties are handicapped in the process because now many parties believe that when it comes to the submission of lists, there needs to be list conferences so that democracy prevails in those parties. Now, it means those parties only have this weekend for them to actually get into those processes in order to submit by next Friday. So it is in that context whereby these parties are raising these issues that with the elections being moved to almost in June because it's on the 29th of May, IEC should have utilized that 3 weeks to afford parties to deal with their processes and not put parties under pressure, whereas then the IEC that got the mechanisms and the resources to actually cope with a later timetable.
So what's your approach going to be now? Earlier on, Masiho did say that they haven't received the communication as yet, but maybe now they have received it. If the meeting does go ahead and the IEC still insists that this is the timetable and the timetable remains in place, what's your next move?
We've not discussed that as a the collective of those parties. However, it was important for us to really highlight these issues because we're of the view that we do not want to have a case whereby there is seemingly life is made difficult, particularly for new or smaller parties when it comes to them participating in the elections. And the reason why we called for the meeting is to engage the IEC, reason with the IEC. Should it happen that we don't win, as this collective, we'll have to sit down and find another possible way forward, just to make sure that we do ensure free and fair elections, because the process must be fair. The election timetable must be fair, also to parties, and not seemingly be difficult to parties and make life easy only for the institution that has got the infrastructure and the resources to manage elections.
Okay. Something interesting that caught me from the statement as well is that it makes reference to the multi-party forum consisting of the political parties that have been mentioned, including the Economic Freedom Fighters, the UDM, Azania, as well as yourself and other parties, Umkhonto weSizwe Party and the LEN Party. Does this mean that this is now a formal forum of these multi-party organizations that will be contesting the elections?
This forum is only for the purposes of the electoral process.
Okay.
It was not even part of the discussion whether there's going to be something formal or it's going to lead to a coalition or something akin to the Moonshot Pact. We've not had those discussions. Our focus now, our sole focus now, is the issue of free and fair elections and protection of the votes of parties, particularly because the biggest issue that is facing the so-called smaller parties, they do not have a wider reach in terms of being having party agents in all voting stations, and that disadvantages many parties because it is our view, firstly, that IEC presiding officers, they should be independent in the sense that regardless whether a party agent from a certain party is not there, but those votes should not be discarded. But what is practically happening is that if a party is not represented by a party agent in a VD, or chances are those votes of those parties will not make it to be counted and tallied up for the votes of that party.
Yeah, considering that this issue has been dealt with at the Constitutional Court, really, is there any other mechanism available to these parties, including yourself?
Which particular issue?
This issue around, one was the issue that was raised about the signatures, and then the other one was the issue around what happens with the residual votes, and the Constitutional Court arguing that it can't make a decision on that. It is left to the parliamentarians, it's left to the lawmakers because of separation of power.
Yeah, our focus mainly is the issue of the timetable. There are other issues we know that they are subject to court proceedings. So for us, we do understand that there are processes in court to deal with those issues. But our main issue for us is to ensure that the timetable is not disadvantageous to parties. Remember, with the new parties, it's even more difficult because they need, over and above submitting the candidate list, they need to submit signatures. So that's additional work to them as the parties, because it's the parties that need to do that instead of the parties collecting the signatures and handing them to IEC to capture. So for us, that is the main issue. There are other issues that are before the court. We will obviously engage the IEC, and then from that meeting with the IEC, we'll see how to move forward.
Thank you so much for your time. That's Vuyo Zungula, who is the leader of the African Transformation Movement.
The Market Update, Monday to Thursday, 6 to 7 p.m.
Want to stay ahead of the financial game? Join us tonight from 6 to 7 p.m. for an insightful journey through the day's market developments, financial updates, and investment news. Tune in for your daily dose of financial intelligence as we navigate the twists and turns of the financial landscape with expert insights. Only on the SAFM Market Update.
SAFM Market Update with Jimmy Muyaha. Hashtag SAFMBTH.
Let's take your voice notes on 0614 104107.
Hi Aldrin, David from Melbourne.
this issue of election that Vuyo is talking about now, it will solve a lot of issues if we just legislate a date on the calendar, like Freedom Day, for instance, as election day. We know election year, elections are held on Freedom Day, so that IEC can prepare and we remove all this ambiguity of waiting for president to announce when elections are coming.
Okay, what do you make of that suggestion that for every election cycle there must be a fixed date so that we are not left with waiting on the president to promulgate the election date? What do you make of that?
Good afternoon, Aldrin. Good afternoon, and the listeners. No, that thing is common, especially in Gauteng. It happened to me 2006 in Boksburg. Because I'm dark or I'm black. They thought I'm a foreigner. I tried to explain. They didn't want to listen. They took me to Boksburg cells. I want to buy this sharp.
#SAFMBTH.
24 minutes after 5 o'clock, in conversation next with Regine Leroux, who's a managing director for Reputation Matters. Another prominent professional in the finance industry has been caught up in a fake qualification scandal. Langa Madongo, a co-founder and investment principal at Summit Africa, has confirmed that he does not have qualifications from the London School of Economics. The scandal takes another turn when it is also confirmed that he has never worked for the international companies such as McKinsey as well as JP Morgan. Madongo currently serves as the deputy of the Association of Black Securities and Investment Professionals. To help us understand the reputational damage and ethical considerations that companies linked to him need to consider in the next step, we are joined by Regine Leroux. Regine, good evening. Thank you so much for making time for us.
Good evening, Aldrin.
So, what reputational damage do some of these companies that have worked with Langa? What potential risk do they suffer?
I mean, Jesus, what is going on these days with this happening? I mean,
it's always the London School of Economics. That's the other thing.
Absolutely. This looks, by the looks of it, like the third time that this has happened. But be that as it may, I think, on the one hand, it's so frustrating that this is happening. Why is this happening? But on the other hand, it's so good that this is coming to the light. And I think it just shines such an important light again on the whole due diligence, the whole governance side of things, and realizing that the people that you want to do business with really need to resonate with your values. So yes, it's absolutely by association is impacting the schools, the universities, the companies. So there's definitely a massive concern, and which needs to be taken. People need to have a look at reviewing that due diligence and taking people to making sure that all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed.
Yeah, and also the verification then, like. So somebody, for instance, joins a professional body. Let's now speak about the professional bodies outside of the work environment. So the person joins a professional body, elected to become the deputy of their professional body. Does the professional body also have a duty to actually do its own vetting and not rely solely on the person's employment? That on the basis that they're employed by such and such a company, that means that this person must be legit and the qualifications are legit?
100% absolutely. All organizations, associations, membership-based organizations should have their own due diligence. You could say, I trust this person, but how do you trust that person? It's by making sure that they have everything in place that they are meant to have in place. So 100%, everybody should be combed under the same brush. There should be no discrepancy. And the thing is, when you join a membership base, I've actually just recently renewed one of my membership And you have to submit a certified certificate of your qualifications. And you should have it, as you said, regardless of a job or wherever. That's something you have very easily to your disposal that you can share. It should be on a PDF, which it should be very easy enough to share around. That there shouldn't be these questions that are raised, and especially if you're on many boards and associations, you should be checked every single time.
Then inside the company itself, I wonder what happens then or the conversations that will be taking place amongst colleagues around this particular individual that has been discovered that they faked their qualifications, but then also the clients.
Yeah, I think from what I've seen, I don't have all the ins and outs of. I've just read the articles, and it does look like the communications team have jumped on this and obviously communicated with the clients the transparency, the authenticity, which is absolutely crucial in a moment, in an instant like this. So that's absolutely great that that's happened. So it is, again, making sure that you have the right channels of communication. It's all about having those relationships as well, so that you can actually, if something like this happens, to nip it in the bud as quickly as possible, because you know that not just your own company's reputation is in question here, it is the other people by association, their reputation, that is being damaged.
Do you review the work at all after such a discovery?
We highly recommend it, because I think when it comes to a reputation, you might think you have a good reputation, and you might think that you've done a good enough job with fixing this, but you certainly need to actually put numbers on the table. What is your value? What is your reputation value? And that's certainly something Reputation Matters does, is to help companies to understand what is that perception. Where have we had the most damage? Have we fixed what needs to be fixed? Not just on a superficial level, but actually looking at the detail and actually putting things in place that this doesn't happen again, so that we can safeguard our reputation.
I just quickly, in conclusion, Regina, as for me, it's also that it seems as though that there are some people who have the necessary acumen, the necessary knowledge to seal the deals in the industry that they are involved in, without the certificate, without the documentation that proves that this person is actually qualified and competent in this particular area. What does that tell us about how we understand the world of work also?
You know what, I always think if you don't have the right qualifications, you're actually making a mockery of those people that have put in the work, that's done the hard grafting to do what needs to be done. And yes, you're going to get away with it for a while, but only for a while. And that damage that you cause in the long run isn't worth it. So it's just to be transparent, be authentic right from the beginning, and just do the right thing. Just as they say, you can't just be a little bit ethical when it suits you. You're either ethical or you're not ethical. So it's your decision which route you want to go.
Thank you so much for your time. Regina Leroux is Managing Director for Reputation Matters. It's a minute after 5:30. Time for the news headlines.
In the headlines, the Deputy President says shortages in the global education sector can be avoided through teachers being trained adequately in various fields. The ConCourt has declined to enroll Rivonia Circle's constitutional challenge of the Electoral Amendment Act for an urgent hearing. And the Commission of Inquiry into the Zondisa building fire in Johannesburg has heard that the building was not suitable for human habitation. There's a full update at 6 o'clock.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Been some heavy weather moving across the Ekurhuleni region this afternoon. Just watch for some pockets of flooding and surface water around Daveyton, through parts of Benoni, down through Brakpan and Springs. A couple of crashes on local routes in that area as well. They had a big sort of ice storm out that way, hailstorm, and became very icy on the roads. The R24 passing the airport's quite heavy. You've got a backlog coming from just after Edenvale on the R24 onto the R21, and the R21 stays under pressure right through until about the Benoni exit due to a crash scene out that side. Durban, collision at the top of Fields Hill, the M13, very slow through Pinetown as you line up in towards the Kloof area. There's also been quite a major truck crash incident on the N3, Pietermaritzburg bound at Ashburton. Now that's causing a delay already back to Linfield Park. It looks like it'll take a while to clear this, and the N3 coming out of Pietermaritzburg also queuing towards the Ashburton exit. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
This is SAFM Sports with Tumin Khabele.
In your sports, the Springboks and captain Siya Kolisi have been nominated for Top Laureus Awards. The Boks are nominated for this year's Laureus World Team of the Year award following the World Cup victory over New Zealand in October, and they'll be against the likes of Manchester City, Spain's women's football team, and Red Bull Racing F1 team, amongst others. Meanwhile, Captain Kolisi is nominated for the Laureus World Comeback of the Year award after recovering from a partial ligament tear. To lead the Springboks to glory, South Africa received 4 nominations at the awards, and they will be held in Madrid on the 22nd of April. Then moving on to football, the Nedbank last 16 draw is happening this evening, and Kevin Johnson has continued to say that he's apologizing to Kaizer Chiefs supporters after the club's humiliating Nedbank Cup exit, and has called for the technical team and players to do some serious introspection if Amakosi are to end their trophy drought.
Yeah, you got to apologize to them, the 16 million supporters that we have, and I'm sure they will be able to see, or they've seen the game on television. It's not that we allowed the team to come at us, or I mean, they never had a shot at goal, I think, but we tried the best we could in order to get as far as we could with this particular tournament, and with the trophy drought being as it is at the moment, yeah, now we've lost it. So the only thing we can do is repay back the people by playing properly in the league.
Then Everton have had their points deduction for a breach of the Premier League's profitability and sustainability rules reduced to 6 points from 10. Everton were docked points with immediate effect in November after being found to have breached profitability and sustainability rules relating to losses. The point deduction meant that Everton dropped from 14th into the standings, into the relegation zone with 4 points, and now with the new reduction means that Everton moved to 15th in the standings with 25 points. In athletics, South African 100-meter record holder Kani Simbini says that he will kick off his season at the Athletics South Africa Grand Prix meeting in Pildage on the 18th of March, although he won't be participating in the first meeting in Potch on the 14th of March. Simbini, who holds the national record of 9.84 seconds, is gearing up for the ASAA Senior National Championships that is set for the 18th to the 21st of April. There, he will strive to defend his national championship title.
I'm trusting coach with my program. I always trust coach with my program, and just putting myself in a position where I don't over race, but also I'm racing competitive races where it means something for the rankings. I'm not going to put myself in a race where I don't get ranking points, because that's an important thing now with world athletics. Get into them. For me, staying top 5, staying top 10, I have to race to get the points. So, we're going to be racing essays definitely, Diamond League C circuit definitely, World Relays definitely, and then going to Olympics. So we'll see. South Africa will be racing, but it's just depending on what the province wants from the.
In cricket, India clinched a series win over England as they edged out Ben Stokes' side by 5 wickets in a thrilling finale to the 4th test. Chasing a target of 192 runs in the 4th innings, India were reduced to 120 for 5, but Shubman Gill and Dhruv Jurel put together a 72-run partnership to help India take an unassailable 3-1 lead in the 5-match series. The 5th and final test will begin on the 7th of March. On that note, it's a wrap from my side. For SAFM Sport, I'm Tumin Khabele.
Eskom understands that electricity is an integral part of running a business. However, electricity demand is currently higher than supply, and energy efficiency is critical. Businesses are encouraged to reduce consumption between 7 a.m. and 6 p.m. by not leaving electrical equipment on standby mode. as well as turning off unnecessary lighting. We can reduce load shedding by working together. Every kilowatt counts.
Mzansi Africa.
Yalaboga.
Siyabulela nangomso.
Thank you for witnessing the Africa Cup of Nations Cote d'Ivoire 2023 in your language of choice on SABC radio stations, digital platforms, and SABC TV channels.
Big ups to McDonald's for being on board.
Your magnificent and heartwarming support gave millions of South Africans a spectacular and exhilarating experience during AFCON.
Asibonge. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
It is 22 minutes now before 6 o'clock, and it's time for a MoneyWeb market update with Jimmy Moyaha, who is in conversation, guess what, with Christo Visa. Wow, good evening. What a way to start your Monday, eh?
Good evening, Aldrin. Good evening to me. Good evening to the listeners. I never thought in my wildest dreams that I'd be starting off. We always complain about Blue Mondays, and I definitely can't say I'm going to have a Blue Monday. This conversation is something that is rare for any radio host, let alone on a business show, and I'm thoroughly looking forward to dissecting and picking apart a couple of points. I'm definitely going to ask about what happened with some developments around Steinhoff, as well as the latest developments. Yes, so Christo seems to be going into diamond mining now, something he initially started in 1976, abandoned to start the Pepcore group, or to grow the Pepcore group by buying his stake in Pepcore, and has now gone back into it 48 years later. So we're going to get a sense of what that looks like, why now at the age of 82, and possibly get his thoughts on the South African picture in an election year and with everything that's been going on. And then we have a conversation with Sasol around their results. They reported first half of the year's results, and not so strong numbers there. Dividends coming down, revenues coming down. There's impairments to look at. There's also remeasurements of previous impairments to look at. I also want to find out about that gas pipeline development through Mozambique that they potentially could be coming to an end. In 2026. So lots to dig into with a Sasol there as well. And then we've got an interesting conversation with Pick n Pay as well. Pick n Pay franchise owner had gone to court to appeal, or is looking to appeal a court judgment that was laid down against them by Pick n Pay. There were some developments there where the franchise owner accused Pick n Pay of wanting to sort of take back all of the stores that they had, and it's quite a developing story because this particular franchise owner has almost 20 stores if you look at Pick n Pay's and Pick n Pay Liquors and Pick n Pay Clothing's combined, and so they generate almost 2 billion rand in revenues from all of that. And there was a conversation around whether or not this is Pick n Pay looking to bully a smaller franchisee, how all of this plays out. So we've got a conversation with the particular franchisee in question around that, and just to get a sense of what's happening now and what the process is there. We've also reached out to Pick n Pay for comment from that perspective. They are not providing comment, but they did issue us with a statement regarding the developments and regarding this particular matter, so we'll get into that and the statement as well when we do our show. And then because it's Monday, we've got our personal finance segment, and we're going to be taking a look at surviving on a student budget. A lot of our listeners may be young students finalizing their final years of tertiary or starting out in tertiary, or even older individuals returning to student life. So we're just going to look at that and see how you get through budgeting. I know when I was at varsity, I went through many nights of eating 2-minute noodles, and even post-varsity, you still have those nights. So we're going to look at that, and we're going to look at budgeting as part of personal finance. But before we get to that, and before we get to the really packed show that we've got, we've had Henko Krier keeping an eye on the markets for us. It looks like the Rand continues to suffer, even though we're seeing other currencies potentially recovering and doing a little better, not so for the Rand. He joins me now to just take a look at what the market movements look like. Good afternoon, Henku. Thanks as always for keeping an eye on the markets. Rand 1934 doesn't look like it's going to get better anytime soon.
Absolutely not, Jimmy. Good evening to you and to Aldrin, and good evening to all the listeners. Yes, the only green that I could find on my screen this afternoon is the US market. They started their week in the green with the Dow Jones, S&P 500 and Nasdaq currently trading about 0.2% stronger. European stocks closed in the red with the FTSE 100 0.1% weaker and the CAC 40 0.3% down, and then the JSE lost 0.8% today and closed at a level of 73,621 points. The industrial index 0.2% weaker, the financial index lost 1%, and then the resources index 1.8% down today, almost 2% weaker at the end of the day. Some of the companies which contributed to that were Anglo and BHP. Anglo lost 4% today, BHP finished 3.2% down, Glencore 2% weaker, FirstRand 1.5% down, and Naspers and Prosus each finished the day 1% weaker. Other companies that lost a bit more than that were Alphaman, which finished 10% weaker at the end of the day, Afrimat 5% down, Bytes and Reunert each lost 3.5%, and Quilter, Tungela and Kumba each finished 3% down. But on the positive side, Anglo Gold and DRD Gold each gained 3.5% today, MTN and Vodacom as well as Telkom, those three companies each 2.5% stronger, and then equities, Dis-Chem, Implats and Sibanye-Stillwater each gained 2% today. On the commodities market, the price of gold is $2,032 an ounce. Silver is trading at $22.60. Platinum is trading at $880 and palladium at $960 an ounce. The price of Brent crude currently $81.40 a barrel. And yes, Jimmy, the rand really tumbling a bit this afternoon and now trading at 19 rand 35 to the US dollar. I hope we never reach 20 rand. Also 24 rand 55 to the pound, 20 rand 95, more or less 21 rand to the euro, and 12 rand 65 to the Australian dollar. Bitcoin is back at $1 million and now trading at $51,300. Jimmy, that's how the markets performed on this Monday.
Thanks so much for that update, Henku. I just had a quick squiz at Bitcoin, and from 51.7 where you had a look at it, I think it's gone up. Now it's at 52.6, so it looks like it's on the climb. It has been on the climb for the last 2 hours or so, so we'll keep an eye on that as we go into the US session and see where it ends by the time we end our show. But for now, we're going to wait around the corner. We'll be back a little later on with that very important interview and those other stories and developments. Aldrin, for now, back to you and the team.
Thank you so much. Look forward to that interview with Christo Visa. Thank you so much. That is Jimmy Moyaha. He's back again just after 6 o'clock. We're taking your calls on 086 000 2032 and your voice notes on 0614 104 107.
You are listening to Aldrin Sampear on SAFM.
Good afternoon, Captain. Hey, one feel emotional with this girl as well. You know, Captain, Aldrin, and listeners, it's times like these that one feel actually ashamed to be a South African. The things that's happening in this country is unacceptable, especially to our kids. I mean, how many other drunk people are walking on the streets and vandalize and do things that they're not supposed to do? Doesn't have the police other work to do? The police other work to do? Why they must harass an innocent girl just walking? I pray to God that justice must prevail in this case. All of them must be sued. Their pences out. Maria April Springbok in the Northern Cape. Thank you.
Hey Aldrin, it's Batang Kambule. I believe it's child abuse because it's a 15-year-old who's been victimized. I believe it borders on child abuse. Whoever's done this must account, because this child has experienced trauma. I mean, being detained, being profiled in that manner, it's unfair. And yeah, we want to see justice on this one.
Well, speaking about the story of the 15-year-old who was detained on suspicion that she is a foreign national and undocumented. Later on, it turned out that she is actually South African, and her father had to bring her birth certificate. The Minister of Home Affairs, Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi, has called in and now joins us on the line. Minister, good evening, and thank you so much for making time for us.
Good evening, Aldo. Good evening to the listeners.
So what does the procedure say, Minister, when it comes to suspicion that a minor could be a foreign national and perhaps maybe don't have the necessary documents?
Yeah, Aldrin, let me start with a disclaimer. Yeah, the disclaimer is that I had to introduce this topic before you started your program, but unfortunately I had to attend meeting.
Sure.
Because I was interested in listening. Now I'm out of the meeting, I hear the topic is being discussed. I just thought because it deals with immigration, I need to explain a few things. Now my disclaimer is that we have not conducted the police as Home Affairs sister department to understand the actual facts under what happened. So what I'm going to tell you is in general terms. Is that okay?
Okay.
Yes, in general terms. Look, it's quite unfortunate that this problem keep on happening. You may remember that it happened in Dixmude. The issue of identification is in Immigration Act, in Section 41 of the Immigration Act, on what police and immigration officers must do when they come across a person who needs to be identified. And that is every person. It doesn't say foreign national or what, which means the issues of how a person appears, the color and all that is irrelevant in this case. Because police and law enforcement officials have got the right in any country to identify a person, and so they ask them. Now, Section 41 gives conditions under which it will happen. And basically, there's no need for arrest because Aldrin, we have got a legacy project here of 2010 because we didn't know who was going to come to South Africa and how we're going to identify them. That legacy project is still working. It's a 24-hour operation center which has got access to the National Population Register, the movement control system at the borders, the National Immigration Information System, and the visa verification system. All that the law enforcement officer needs to do is to phone that place, give a date of birth, which they will get from the person, and then phone there. They'll be able to find out. To make their work easier, we have just put an order for handheld gadgets, whereby you put your fingerprint on the gadget, it identifies who you are, if you are actually documented. But Section 41 goes further. It is the duty of the arresting officer, whether it's an immigration officer in Home Affairs or a police person, to help the person identify themselves. In other words, you don't arrest and leave the onus on them. You must help them. For instance, you may ask them, who can we phone to identify you? Where do you come from? If it's a minor, immigration officials don't usually arrest minors. We phone the Department of Social Development. But we do know that sometimes police get worried if they meet a minor alone at night. They might actually take them in for their own safety, and I wouldn't really call that an arrest. So again, I'm repeating, I don't know what happened in this case. I'm just clarifying you how these things are done. How do we make people identify themselves in such a way that it doesn't cause any debate whatsoever?
Yeah, just again, Minister, the legacy project from 2010 that you're speaking about, and I know you're saying that there are these gadgets that you have ordered, but that legacy project, what's the turnaround time when a police officer or an immigration officer puts through a phone call and wants to find out whether the person that is in front of them is documented or not, or whether the person is a South African? What's the turnaround time?
They're supposed to answer instantaneously because, as I'm saying, they've got access to the National Population Register. Aldrin. On the National Population Register, you'll find anybody who has ever taken a birth certificate, number one, anybody who has ever taken an ID, number two, anybody that has ever taken a passport, number three, anybody that ever got married and went to Home Affairs for a marriage certificate, and anybody who died and the family went to obtain a death certificate. All those you will find on the National Population Register. On the NIIS, you will find anybody who comes from another country as an asylum seeker or a refugee who came but announced their presence in the country, not those who stayed illegally. Those who announced their presence, you'll find them on the NIIS. On the visa adjudication system, you'll find anybody who is in South Africa having come via a form of a visa or a form of a permit. All those are there. If anybody is not there, then you make an assumption that that person is illegal. Like we nearly made that wrong assumption with Thabo Bester.
Yeah.
And we nearly made that assumption because you are seeing none of those systems. Now that's what you do on the legacy project. In other words, the police or the official, whether immigration official or not, who has phoned, will sit there on the phone and wait. Can you check Aldrin Sampear? This is the date of birth. All we need is your name and date of birth. And the rest, that needs to identify you.
Yep.
Now, as I'm saying, to make it easier, because people sometimes give wrong dates and wrong names of death, and we keep on searching, you just put the fingerprint. If you gave a wrong name, that fingerprint is going to tell us stories about you.
How soon will that gadget be made available or rolled out?
We are waiting for whoever we have ordered it from. No, we have already piloted it. All that is left is for it to be delivered. We are waiting for delivery.
Yeah. Do you have a turnaround time, more or less, when you expect it to be delivered by?
No. Unfortunately, I didn't ask his procurement issues. All I know is that it has already been procured. We are waiting for it to arrive.
Okay. Minister, just something else. I know that you actually asked to call in, Minister. But there's this issue that we wanted to ask you about, the digital nomads. Have you heard about them? These are people who come from other countries, come and work in South Africa, but they work online. Of course, they work remotely as well. And some
the remote
people,
work visa.
Yes, the remote workers. And in Cape Town, for instance, the complaint is that these people are also pushing up the prices of properties, rental properties, as well as the cost of food, because they find it much cheaper to live in Cape Town. Is this a concern that you've been told about?
No. Remember, Aldrin, that the president put up a team under the Vulindlela project. He put up a team which was chaired by the former Director General, the veterans Mabuso Msimang, to review all the visas in the country and make recommendations. One of the issues that many people demanded was this remote work visa, or a nomad visa as you call it. So what we have done, I think it's already 10 days or so, we have issued a gazette where we are making proposals on the regulations. We are asking the public to comment. If there are such problems that you have mentioned or such concerns, we will expect people to comment about them. Even yourself, you can comment. Because after the comment, we are going to publish the regulations, and then we start providing a work visa under those regulations and under those maybe restrictions, if any.
Okay, no, perfect. I really appreciate your time. But Minister, on the 15-year-old, is this something that you would be investigating as your office?
Well, it's police. It's a police matter from what I understood.
Okay.
It's a police matter from what I understood.
Yeah. But it seems as though that the police officers themselves don't know about what you've just explained to us. Perhaps maybe that could... I'm saying that perhaps maybe it could be that the police officers don't know what you've just explained to us now, including how easy it is to check the details of somebody that they suspect of being a foreign national.
I don't know. We tried to explain during what... You remember there was a kalabalu about the person... in Deep Sloot, who was asked to name an elbow in Stronger, which I also don't know as a South African, by the way. No, yes. So you don't ask people about features and all those. You just phone the operation center, full stop.
Yeah.
Then you get all the information you are looking for.
Yeah, because it seems as though that they didn't even give an opportunity to call her parents. She had to use the phones from some of the people that she was detained with.
Well, as I say, it will be a police matter and a matter of social development. It's not a Home Affairs matter.
Thank you so much for your time. Dr. Aldrin Sampear is the Minister of Home Affairs. We've come to the end of our voyage. Thank you so much for choosing Flight SAFM BTH 326 with me, Aldrin Sampear. And actually there is an X here from one of our listeners. Who's this person again? Mshengulala, who says that I know we have a thing about not praising a fish for swimming, but not for the first time. It's not for the first time that I hear the Minister Motsoaledi calling into radio when there is a topic that concerns his department and provide clarity. And we really do appreciate the Minister for that.
SAFM supports a litter-free South Africa. Play your part in keeping our surroundings and environment clean. SAFM
leading the conversation.
Well, before we say since the South African Broadcasting Corporation would like to alert the public of an email correspondence purporting to be that of the SABC threatening the public that they will be issued with a warrant of arrest for non-payment of TV license fees. The public is advised to ignore the contents of a correspondence coming from an email address jjm@mega.bw. This is not an SABC email address, and the corporation will not at any point threaten anyone with a warrant of arrest. The SABC also advises the public not to download any statement from this fake email. As instructed, the SABC TV license department can be reached on 011 3309 555 or can be accessed through an email to tvlic.info@sabc.co.za for friendly and kind customer service. Alternatively, the public may use our secure website www.tvlic.co.za to download statements.
#SAFMBTH.
Now we've really come to the end of our voyage. Thank you so much for choosing Flight SAFM BTH 326 with me, Aldrin Sampear. Today we are playing out with Burning Spear, Identity, and our parting shot is from Muhammad Ali, who once said, "He who is not courageous enough to take risk will accomplish nothing in life." And Tulani is reading our credits this evening.
Good evening, SFM listeners. When you hear this voice, you'll know that it's about wrapping time for this wonderful Beyond the Headlines that we have been listening to today. In case you're wondering who has been behind the production, it was the wonderful team of Ukanya, Utemba, Utumi, Kagiso, Charles Vusi, and how can we even forget the most important man in this particular show, Aldrin, the captain himself, Sampear. Good evening to everybody. My name is Tulani Nzima in Croydon, Ekuruleni once again.
Aldrin Sampear on Beyond the Headline.
And remember to love each other and lead with compassion. Dotsins, enjoy the rest of your evening.
Your work must be done. 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 Work in the east, work in the west, work in the north, work in the south, work over there, we work over here, work everywhere, work over there, we work over here, we work everywhere.